The executions of Eero Holsti and Palo on Teton K2 on the 22nd of October 1997 are an indication of the activities behind the facades of the Finnish police, which differ like a night from a day from the happy message of the police facades as law enforcers. A law that is just a fog curtain hovering over democracy that hides the dictatorship and illegal actions of the authorities, which is managed with false statements and the course of events. Holsti and Palo, who had to die just like Jenna Lipomäki so that the Finnish police Jyrianio's drug trade, led from the police headquarters, would not be revealed together with other illegal activities such as Seppo Selänpää's bank robberies, which were carried out with the help of the Honda League and whose robbery money was laundered with the help of Jyrianio's drug trade, where this league spent all its money, that is, on drugs. That was Jyrianio's double life at that time. The Finnish police, whose activities are like a criminal organization whose basis of activity rests on the coalition, its murderous policy and its insane president, the White King of the coalition, and little bit Waco Sauli, the two-faced Niinisto and his ministers of death, who have clearly participated in these acts that shock society in the background forces of the operation, which apparently allow these Finnish police bank robberies and the drug trade from its own headquarters when it is ready to operate, even when the coalition's mentally deranged ministers expect the Finnish police to help them with even bigger crimes than Seppo Selänpää's bank robberies, which did not, however, take human lives. The Finnish police, the majority of which would seem to be actively involved in these crimes, which it commits behind its own facades if the state leadership so wishes, and why wouldn't it work? Because criminal activity, if anything, is the backbone of the Finnish police, its future and the vocation, towards which it is moving purposefully, loudly and bumping, which is my luck and what is due to the unprofessionality of Juha Rautaimo and Jyrianio on the field, which I have noticed. Thank God for all these murdered people. Teton K2 executions, which are proof of the peace negotiation skills of the Nobel laureate President, Martti Ahtisaari, their effectiveness and how they brought peace to the police department of Little Robertin Street and the entire official machinery in Finland by executing the resistance that stood in the face of the peace on the terms of Martti Ahtisaari in the Teton K2 executions. This leaves a big question mark as to how much resistance has been murdered in Africa for the sake of Martti Ahtisaari's peace and his Nobel Prize, but my own assessment is that a lot.
Helsingin poliisilaitoksen hälytyskeskus sai hälytyksen keskiviikkona aamuyöllä. Hälytyksen tehnyt vartija ilmoitti, että hotelli Palasessa oli tapahtunut ryöstö.
Kuka menee tarkistamaan hotelli Palasen reseptsuunnista, tulee ryöstöhälytysvartijoita liikkeeseen.
Paikalle saapui nopeasti yksi järjestyspoliisin partio. Poliisipartio välitti ryöstäjän tuntomerkit hälytyskeskukselle ja vahvisti, että kyseessä oli aseellinen ryöstö.
Poliisi on ammuttu, 153 on ammuttu. Missä päin? Kapteenin katu, Tehtaan katu. On poliisipartiota ammuttu. Miehet makaa maassa kahdesti päähän ammuttu, nyt tänne väkeä. 2 virkaveljää makaa maassa ammuttuna.
Hotelli Palasen portieri kertoi tutkijoille aamuyön tapahtumista. Hotellin ulko-oven summeri oli soinut yöllä noin kello 2.30. Oven takana oli ollut siististi pukeutunut mies, joka oli puhunut sujuvaa englantia. Mies oli sanonut, että hänellä on huonevaraus. Vastaanottotiskillä mies oli kuitenkin vetänyt paitansa kauluksen suunsa eteen ja ottanut pistoolin esiin. Mies oli vaatinut englanniksi rahaa ja käskenyt portierin menemään maahan makaamaan. Mies oli kahminut kassakoneen lokerikossa olleet rahat taskuunsa. Ryöstäjä sai saaliikseen noin 7000 markkaa. Poliisien ampuminen oli tapahtunut noin 10 minuuttia sen jälkeen, kun hotelli oli ryöstetty. Näiden kahden rikospaikan välinen etäisyys oli hieman yli kilometri. Ehtiäkseen hotellista ampumapaikalle tässä ajassa pakenijan oli käytettävä tiettyä reittiä, mutta silminnäkijöitä ei kyseiseltä reitiltä poliisille ilmoittautunut. Oli kuitenkin myös toinen keino nähdä öisille kaduille. Muun muassa Suomen puolustusvoimien pääesikunta sijaitsi ryöstäjän mahdollisen pakoreitin varrella. Tutkijat kävivätkin kaikki pääesikunnan valvontavideot tapahtumayöltä läpi. Valvontakameran nauhoilta löytyi kyseisenä ajankohtana mieshenkilö, joka oli juossut hotelli Palasen suunnasta Tähtitorninmäelle päin, eli poliisien ampumispaikkaa kohti. Mortensen selitti, että oli joutunut tilanteessa paniikkiin, mikä oli johtanut ikävään lopputulokseen. Mortensen kertoi, että oli ryöstön jälkeen paennut hotellista juosten ja päästyään Tehtaankadulle poliisiauto oli pysähtynyt hänen viereensä. Toinen poliiseista oli tiedustellut, mistä hän oli tulossa, ja toinen poliisi oli mennyt takaisin autoon selvittämään tarkempia tuntomerkkejä ryöstäjästä. Tuolloin Mortensen oli kertomuksensa mukaan ottanut aseen esille ja oli sillä uhaten pakottanut toisen poliisin maahan ja käskenyt toista tulemaan ulos autosta. Nuorempi poliiseista oli tehnyt hänen käskyjensä mukaan, mutta vanhempi oli laskeutunut vain polvilleen. Mortensen oli osoittanut aseellaan nuorempaa poliisia ja käskenyt sanomaan vanhemmalle poliisille, että tämä menisi maahan vatsalleen. Tässä vaiheessa Mortensen kertoi, että hänen aseensa oli lauennut vahingossa ja osunut maassa maannutta nuorempaa poliisia takaraivoon. Mortensen joutui kertomuksensa mukaan paniikkiin ammuttuaan toista poliisia ja oli tämän jälkeen ampunut myös vanhempaa poliisia.
Pieterin K211 Apartment Hotel.
Kyseisen vihjeen perusteella ilmeni, että eräässä ampumapaikan lähellä sijaitsevassa huoneistohotellissa oli asunut tanskalainen mies, joka puhui sujuvasti englantia. Soittaja kertoi, että tanskalainen vastasi hyvin julkisuuteen annettuja tuntomerkkejä murhaajasta. Kyseisellä miehellä oli ollut vaikeuksia huoneistohotellin vuokranmaksun suhteen, eikä hänestä ollut kuulunut mitään keskiviikon jälkeen. Eli poliisien murhan jälkeen mies oli kadonnut. Tutkijat saivat näin vahvistusta omille tutkimuksilleen, sillä myös teletunnistetiedot olivat johdattamassa poliiseja kyseiseen huoneistohotelliin.
Poliisi oli juuri saanut oikeuden teletunnistetietojen saamiseen. Tämä oli ensimmäisiä kertoja, kun niitä nyt sitten Raastuvan oikeudelta pyydettiin ja me saimme samana päivänä jo luvan teletunnistetietoihin ja kun näitä sitten operaattorilta näitä kyseisiä hotelliin tulleita puheluja saatiin, niin niitä tuli muistaakseni lähemmäs 100 puhelua. Me saimme selville, että yksi puhelu oli tullut Pietarin kadulla olevasta huoneistohotellista. Nämä kaksi tietoa kun yhdistyivät, että puhelu on tullut huoneistohotellista ja siinä asuu tanskalainen, jonka tuntomerkit, ikä, koko sopii ja vielä, että tämä puhuu pohjoismaalaisittain erittäin hyvää englantia.
Tutkijat asettivat vartioinnin huoneistohotellin edustalle ja ottivat selvää muun muassa kyseisen asunnon pohjapiirustuksesta. Aamulla karhuryhmä teki iskun asuntoon.
Sieltä ei löytynyt ketään. Melkein heti sieltä sitten soitettiin, että tämän asunnon vaatekomerosta on löytynyt tämmöinen putkikassi, joka sopii tämän ryöstäjän kantaman kassin tuntomerkkeihin. Ja kun tämä kassi oli avattu, niin sieltä oli löytynyt sitten vaatteita, jotka olivat samanlaisia kuin tällä ryöstäjällä. Ja sieltä oli löytynyt myös pistooli.
Huoneistosta löydetty ase toimitettiin kiireesti tutkimuksiin, ja jo saman päivän kuluessa tutkijat saivat tietää, että poliisit oli ammuttu kyseisellä aseella. Nyt tutkijat olivat lähes varmoja siitä, että asunnon haltija oli poliisimurhaaja. Miehen vuokraamasta asunnosta löytyi myös erilaisia vaatteita ja papereita sekä matkustajalaivalta otettu turistivalokuva, jonka perusteella huoneistohotellin virkailija tunnisti miehen.
I can't find any more information about the apartment hotel on Pieterin K2, even though it is an incident that took place in Finland. but it may be very possible that this apartment hotel was 100% rented by the police themselves for this particular incident, because the whole story that has been built on Steen Christensen is absolutely ridiculous if the comparison point is, for example, Lee Harvey Oswald and the Kennedy assassination, which has been moderately good, and considering it was made in the 60s, it has been really good. The police found this apartment with the help of a massive tip phone, but when you take into account how secretive all the activities around these murders were, for example in the field, these tips that came to the police have obviously come from the police's own investigators or from someone very close to them who have been involved in building this case, and which is buried underneath many other tips that the police received. In addition, Christensen had unpaid rent, and why did he commit the robbery of the Hotel Palace? The Hotel Palace, which he had called before the robbery to reserve a room, on the basis of which the police were able to locate the robber at the Pieterin K211 apartment hotel where Christensen had left a murder weapon and a photo of himself. Can you imagine? This should be a Danish professional bank robber. Escape trip to Hämeenlinna. Based on Christensen's own statements, he had left Pieterin K211 in a morning after the murders to the train station, from where he had taken the train to Tampere, but had gotten off at Hämeenlinna. There is a big contradiction in this Christensen's story regarding the fact that immediately after the murders of Holst and Palo, such a police circus started in Helsinki that not a single person could walk on these streets without being stopped before 7 a.m. when the police removed their cordon because of the morning traffic, which means that Christensen, as a Danish professional criminal, must have known that he can't go out until the morning traffic when people go to work about 7:30. Under which cover he can walk around Helsinki. According to Google Maps, this escape trip from Pieterin K2 to the Helsinki railway station takes about 27 minutes on foot. The train journey from Helsinki to Hämeenlinna takes 1 hour and 16 minutes, and the transfer from the Hämeenlinna railway station to Sokos Hotel Varkuna takes about 10 minutes. Ideal time. This time, 2 hour and 03 minute is the ideal time that you can get to Sokos Hotel Varkuna at 9:33, and it seems that the investigators of Violent Crime Unit has checked this, maybe even for real, but they don't take into account that Christensen is a foreigner who has lost his way to cold Finland, where he has no friends, where he has no money, and he would have turned the wrong way many times, as he did at the beginning, when he came to Finland. Turning the wrong direction in a big city is something that I know myself, because I have been abroad myself a lot and lost many times when there were no internet on your pocket. This performance, what is told in the news that Christensen came Sokos Hotel Varkuna at 9:30, can be done by a person who, for example, takes the train from Helsinki to Hämeenlinna every day to work, but not the bank robber who is being searched for by helicopters. I think this time of 9:30 is not realistic for a person who is alone in Finland without any contacts, at a time when there were no smartphones and internet, and it is a foreigner who does not know Helsinki. Christensen time. At Christensen time, you can add at least 20 minutes to his wanderings in Helsinki before he found a train station that was not in his plans, which changed when he shot Holsti and Palo on Tetan K2, at least in the fairy tales of the Finnish blue team of stupids and its bulldozer of crime scenes, Juha Rautaimo. You can add 30 minutes more time to waiting time at the Helsinki train station, because it rarely happens that you get on the train while running and you have to buy ticket as also, and this is your first time on this kind of situation. This time as a whole is 2 hours and 43 minutes, which mean that Christensen would have reached Sokos Hotel Varkuna at 10:13 a.m., while according to the hotel's manager, Veli-Pekka Pillinen, he arrived at 9:30 a.m. If Christensen is charged with the incompetence that the police have reported about Christensen as the robber of the Hotel Palace, he could not possibly have made it to Sokos Hotel Varkuna at 9:30, but a realistic time for this could be something like 10:13 or even later. Christensen as a foreigner without Google Maps and other smartphones would have gotten lost many times in Helsinki on his way to the train station. He would not have found the ticket booths in time after all his wanderings in Helsinki as a foreigner on a time when there were no smartphones and internet on your pocket. Events in Hämeenlinna. Wednesday. When Steen Christensen checked into the Sokos Hotel Varkuna at 9:30 and coincidentally at the same time, the hotel manager Veli-Pekka Pillinen was at the hotel reception, who described Steen Christensen as being very pleasant and going out like the other hotel guests. Events in Hämeenlinna. Thursday. Christensen repairs Ericsson's phone in the Hailu store, where the microphone is broken. The store's salesman, Mikko Uusitalo, remembered the man and said that he was very pleasant and there was nothing about him to indicate that he was the man who murdered the police. All of Christensen's movements have not been reported openly, but he apparently went to get a doctor's prescription for medicine for neck pain on Thursday, about which there is conflicting information. In the series Crime Stories from Finland, Esko Peltola tells in his own words that Christensen had gone to the health center to get a prescription for neck pain, where health center in Finland means municipal services. But Ilta-Sanomat had reported that Christensen had received the prescription from a doctor offering private medical services, which I think is true because in Finland a foreigner would not necessarily get a service from a side of municipal services. This would mean that Peltola, as a police officer, is lying about where Christensen got the prescription, at least to the public. But there would be nothing new in that from the Finnish police, when its list of achievements includes a drug trade led from its own headquarters for decades, the disclosure of which to Eero Holsti could have led to his execution on the Tetan K2. Christensen goes to the pharmacy to buy medicine and the woman who sold it to him described Christensen as really smart and pleasant, while the detectives of the Finnish Blue Team of Stupids say that Christensen had gone on a rampage there so that he would definitely be noticed.
Christensenin pidätykseen johtanut ratkaiseva vihje tuli Hämeenlinnan raatihuoneen apteekista. Nimi reseptissä paljasti poliisisurmaajan. Christensenin nähnyt farmaseutti piti tätä huomiota herättämättömänä.
No hän oli todella fiksu nuori mies, että ihan rauhallinen ja huomiota herättämätön.
Millä kielellä asioi?
No kun hän siinä vieressäni oli silloin torstaina, niin hän puhui ruotsia, mutta sitten he muuttivat sen englannin kielelle.
Did you notice that, the pharmacist said, they changed the language to English? Does this mean that Christensen had a partner in this situation, or does the pharmacist mean something like another colleague from the pharmacy who was involved in this situation because it was a foreign person and I got the impression that this interviewed woman only speaks Finnish. It is quite clear to me that Christensen has not moved anywhere alone, but for his own work, as a scapegoat paid by the Finnish police. Someone has always moved around Finland with him and driven him from place to place like Helsinki, Hämeenlinna, which Christensen has not taken by train because if Christensen has participated to the action on the field in Helsinki, it has been at most the robbery of Hotel Palace, after which he has moved to a car in the immediate vicinity of Hotel Palace, in which he has been transported away from the field, and all the images left on the surveillance camera are of some other person to whom this role performance belonged.
Hän puhui ruotsia, mutta sitten he muuttivat sen englannin kielelle, sen palvelun.
Ja oliko siinä tilanteessa jotakin, mikä ei ollut aivan rutiininomaista, aivan tavallista?
Kaikki oli ihan tavallista.
No mikä sitten teissä herätti lopulta sen kysymyksen ja epäilyksen, että onko tässä nyt jotakin erikoista?
No sinä päivänä ei mikään. Et vasta lauantaina, kun tämä tieto ja nimi tuli julkisuuteen kello 12.
Oli käynyt jopa riehumassa siellä, eli varmasti niin kuin kiinnitti huomion itseensä, ja tästähän tuli sitten muutama vinkki.
I can't think of any other explanation for this inconsistency between the Finnish police and the eyewitness accounts, other than that the Finnish police's organized crime league led by Jari Aunio, Juha Rautaimo and their violent crime unit, whose handiwork is these false criminal investigations of these police murders, which is built to match the public tips, and how this Rautaimo and his team have simply not been able to go through all the clues that these police murders caused, and the false criminal investigation is built on the profile of a regular murderer who would certainly act nervous after such acts. But Christensen is not a murderer of these Finnish police Holsti and Palo in my criminal investigations, and why has he been able to act so calmly and pleasantly during his time on the free side after these murders? The Finnish police, who has obviously been at odds with what he told, because how do you explain to the people that someone is a murderer if his behavior does not support this? This criminal investigation is so full of false and contradictory statements that, based on them, Steen Christensen could very well be acquitted of police murders that he did not commit, and focus on the activities of the Finnish Organized Crime League, which unjustifiably calls itself the police, and its sandstorm of crime scenes, Juha Rautaimo, and why his performance on the police's own lists are like Jari Aunio's golden trophies, which he has earned from being the Police Officer of the Year. But behind the facades of which all the eyewitness statements have been swept away, that differs like a day from night with the police's own story, and how Rautaimo's professional expertise, which is in the police's own statistics, shines in the first place, year after year, only because there are no other real competitors in this series of police investigations, except now. Events in Hämeenlinna. Friday. On Friday morning, the police had been able to track down their own paid scapegoat based on tips from the public, which apparently came from their own investigators in their free time, and on the basis of phone calls that had come to the Palace Hotel, one of which was called from Pieter in K211, where the police searched the house. On Friday, Steen Christensen went shopping for clothes in the Jim and Jill store in Hämeenlinna. The salesperson couldn't connect Christensen with the police killer because of his friendly and pleasant nature, even though he was constantly looking over his shoulder. At this point, the Finnish police have already received a tip from the Sibelius K2 pharmacy employee on Thursday, and here in Hämeenlinna Steen Christensen is just shopping for jeans on Friday in the middle of the day like any tourist. Is this Finnish stupid group really trying to catch this police killer, or did this operation include a weekend in a spa hotel with all the spices, of course? Events in Hämeenlinna. Saturday. On Saturday, Christensen barricaded himself in his hotel room and had put a sign on his door, "Do not disturb," during which he had apparently written a suicide message on the wall with a marker about the wishes of the Finnish police, which was only one of the stories in this criminal investigation, the purpose of which was to show Christensen's guilt for the police murders through remorse. But his behavior and actions in Hämeenlinna based on the statements of the people dealing with him, there is no evidence that Christensen is committing suicide, and how he is not a real killer and he did not kill these two police, which only tells about the illegal methods of the Finnish police as a law enforcers, and how it can even frame innocent people for crimes with its own credibility. However, on the basis that the accused confess everything, in Christensen's case, because of lots of money and luxury life inside the prison, which is the prize to take the blame on these murder on your own account. According to the police story, Christensen had tried to commit suicide 3 times, which completely contradicts the eyewitness statements, which only shows the lies of the Finnish police's violent crime unit spreads with their own statements to the eyes of the people through the media. The Finnish police, who had wiretapped Christensen's hotel room on Saturday, based on which they were able to tell when Christensen was in the shower, could this Danish tourist have been arrested at this point when he has soap in his eyes? According to the police, Christensen had tried to commit suicide by first cutting his wrists, which did not work, so he switched to drugs and alcohol, which also did not work. After this, Christensen reportedly left his hotel room, which was under police surveillance, during which he apparently ran into a Finnish police detective in the elevator, where he pretended to be drunk as if he had arrested Christensen, who at this point was drunk, on drugs, had attempted suicide twice and was unarmed, so there certainly wouldn't have been much resistance to Finnish police detective, even he played drunk. However, at this point, Christensen headed to the boat on the pier in front of the Sokos Hotel Varkuna with liquor to wait for death, which did not come, just like the Finnish police did not, even though at this point he had to come over the barricade built by the Finnish police, which had been built around the hotel. Christensen had apparently run out of booze on the boat and had become cold, so he had left the boat after the 3rd failed suicide attempt, drunk, on drugs, and once again he walked through the cordons of the Finnish police, now for the 3rd time, after which he had gone to his own room. After this, Christensen had once again gone to try his luck with the cordon of the Finnish police, which he once again walked over, now for the 4th time by the way, but this time, the Finnish police detectives was not pretend to be drunk and they saw that Christensen was trying to escape and they ran for him. If the Finnish police take such a line with their own friends like Jari Aunio, Suvi Linden or other dirty scumbags, then nobody in Finland has to go to jail if you are a friend of the Finnish decision makers and the police, if you don't necessarily want to, and this is the biggest problem on the part of disadvantaged people in Finland, whom the Finnish police together with medical psychiatry are murdering, secretly of course, and whose actions no one in Finland is not investigate, except me, and it is my luck that the Finnish police has not only pretend to be drunk at while but at all time. Christensen's arrest.
Mortensenia koskeva tiedote johti jo samana päivänä yleisövihjeeseen, jonka perusteella selvisi hänen senhetkinen olinpaikkansa. Hänet oli nähty ja tunnistettu Hämeenlinnassa, asioimassa sikäläisessä apteekissa.
Oli käynyt jopa riehumassa siellä, eli varmasti niin kuin kiinnitti huomion itseensä, ja tästähän tuli sitten muutama vinkki, ja nämä tsekkauksethan sitten tuotti nopeasti tuloksen, että hotelli oli tiedossa, ja sitten ruvetaan sen jälkeen nyt, pannaan heti tarkkailu päälle, että sinnehän ei rynnätä, vaan tarkkailu päälle, onko mies huoneessa, eikö ole. Ne asiat pystyy tsekkaamaan todella hyvin, kukaan ei huomaa mitään. Ja sitten kun saatiin varmistus siihen, että mies on huoneessa, niin sitten ruvetaan suomeksi rakentamaan sitä sisäänmenosysteemiä, että sinne ei taaskaan lähde ne 2 rikospoliisin jätkää sinne oven taakse, vaan tietty systeemi rakennetaan ulos. Ensinnäkin pelkästään varmistetaan se, että kiinniotto pystyy tapahtumaan turvallisesti. Kun tämmöistä jätkää lähdetään etsimään, eli suomeksi ottamaan kiinni, niin ei sinne lähde 2 siviilipukuista rikospoliisia kolkuttelemaan oveen, että terve, lähdetkö mukaan, vaan mies otetaan kiinni sen mukaan, kun tiedetään, että mitä se voi tehdä. Ja totta kai karukopla tämmöisessä asiassa, niin karukopla oli 24 tuntia vuorokaudessa meidän käytössä.
Every real police officer and civilian should understand at this point that Steen Christensen is not a cop killer, he has been framed to take the blame on these murders. The police have his gun and he can't really get any other weapon in Finland as a foreigner, and he is no danger to others based on eyewitness statements, But all this action that the Finnish blue team of stupids is doing is just their own game, which they show to the people through the media to cover up Eero Holsti and Palo murders committed by a team consisting of either professional soldiers or specially trained police officers. The police had received a tip about Christensen, who had done business at Hämeenlinna's pharmacy, on Thursday, after which they set out to build surveillance around the hotel. If this situation had been the real one, the police would have caught Christensen while he was sleeping at the latest at night. But since it is a staged manhunt that is driven more by plot twists shown to the public than any other facts, Christensen was not caught when it would have been the best chance, i.e. at night. Sokos Hotel Varkuna as a place of arrest. The location of the arrest is the Sokos Hotel Varkuna area, which is extremely good for carrying out any kind of secret operation where there are not necessarily many outsiders on a Saturday in October. This area would be the best place to besiege and set up a blockade ring, through which Christensen, for some reason, had somehow gotten past Christensen's case for the second time. It is absolutely unbelievable how Christensen could possibly get past the police cordon in such a remote place as Sokos Hotel Varkuna was located. But I don't think that the police had even made a bigger cordon or any measures in the vicinity of the Sokos Hotel to arrest Christensen, not to mention any evacuations of the hotel, because it would have only attracted too much attention to this secret fake operation and why Christensen was arrested after sunset on a remote jogging path. At first, I wondered why the police had delayed arresting the unarmed man all day Saturday, who had barricaded himself in his own room, apparently because they didn't want eyewitnesses to this arrest, and why it was done at 18:20 when the sun had set on Saturday the 25th at 17:45. Which guaranteed Christensen's capture in the dark, and there are no eyewitnesses to this activity. There are two different versions of Christensen's capture, and both of these cases are equally incredible, and how Christensen could easily escape from his hotel room and bypass the police ongoing surveillance that was targeted on Christensen's hotel room. Arrest in front of the hotel main door. Contrary to the first information that became public, Steen Christensen was not arrested at Varkuna's door, but about 100 meters from the hotel in Varakaniemi. According to information obtained by Iltalehti but not officially confirmed, the police tried to get Christensen to surrender voluntarily. When he stepped out of the front door of the hotel, the police tried to get Christensen to surrender voluntarily. When Christensen stepped out of the front door of the hotel, the policeman called him names and told him to surrender. In that case, a desperate Christensen ran away and ran into a nearby bushes. But immediately the Dane realized the hopelessness of the situation. He realized that he was in the middle of a strong police force and came out of the bushes looking scared. The first opportunity to catch Christensen came an hour or two earlier when he was taking a shower. Officers listening in Christensen's room heard the sound of a shower. However, the police did not act yet. Maybe there weren't enough forces at the place yet, or maybe the man's identity wasn't completely certain so far. Can you imagine? The Finnish police let Christensen run away from the shower even though they had surveillance on in the hotel based on their own statements, with which there is still uncertainty about Christensen's identity, which prevented Christensen's arrest. In addition to this, according to Alibi's information, the undercover police officer had been in the same elevator with Christensen before, but in order to arrest Christensen, he decided to pretend to be drunk. Can you imagine? These stories are like the main dungeon of Giuliano's bottomless stories from his imagination if they are not true and are gossip started by the police themselves about the events of Sokos Hotel Varkuna. If, in addition to this cajoling, the police cannot gather enough reinforcements between Thursday and Saturday. What can this be but deliberate inefficiency and reluctance to catch the supposed police killer, who is actually a collaborator of the police who has been paid a lot for confessing to the murders of Holsti and Palo, which he did not commit. Arrest in Varakaniemi.
Koska poliisit tiesivät Mortensenin käyttäneen aikaisemminkin asetta, piti ensin turvata muiden hotelliasukkaiden turvallisuus ja minimoida panttivankitilanteen syntyminen. Kun hotellin ulkovarmistusta oltiin luomassa ja hotellivieraita evakuoitiin, tanskalainen ehti poistua huoneestaan ja koko hotellista varauloskäynnin kautta.
Sitä ei tiedetä, oliko hän havainnut nämä meidän poliisioperaatiot vai oliko hän omasta halustaan poistunut sieltä varauloskäynnin kautta ja oli lähtenyt kävelemään puiston läpi rantaa kohti. Hänen poistuminen kuitenkin oli hotellista havaittu, poliisimies oli sen havainnut ja hän radiolla ilmoitti muille liikkeellä oleville partioille, että tältä tulee tuntomerkkeihin sopiva mies.
Paikallinen koirapartiohan sitten otti hänet kiinni. Aika nopeasti sen jälkeen muistakin näkivät poistumisia. Koiran kanssa ottivat kiinni.
When the police started to make a show arrest of Christensen had escaped through the emergency exit and ran towards the park, Varakaniemi, which makes no sense based on the story where Christensen had tried to commit suicide 3 times, which means that he would really have no reason to run away from this situation anymore where he is completely alone as a foreigner in Finland without any contacts. But people in such a situation actually want to surrender and that this will all end. And the police will arrest these suicide killers. There is a big question mark where this backup exit is located from which Christensen had escaped past the police cordon, now for 2 times, which apparently doesn't even exist because according to the police, Christensen has been able to escape and had fled along the bike path to the park where the police made the arrest at 18:20, where there were certainly no eyewitnesses due to the police's imaginary isolation when the sun had already set at 17:45 and it was dark. I believe that this so-called place where Christensen was arrested is near the bridge because I do not believe that the police would cross this bridge with a car, and the filming of this childish car chase with Christensen was put in the end near this bridge. Arrest in Varakaniemi, based on eyewitness accounts.
Christensenin pidätys tapahtui siis hyvin vähäeleisesti, eikä se juuri häirinnyt Hämeenlinnan lauantai-illan rauhaa. MTV:n uutiset tavoitti silminnäkijän, joka seurasi pidätysoperaatiota hotellin viereiseltä taksitolpalta.
Tanskalaisen murhaajan pakomatka siis todellakin päättyi noin 3,5 tuntia sitten tuossa takanani olevassa hämeenlinnalaishotellissa. Ja hotellin henkilökunta oli äärimmäisen pidättyväistä. Se ei halunnut antaa minkäänlaisia haastatteluja siitä, miten poliisi toimi, miten tuo operaatio täällä Hämeenlinnassa eteni. Ja täysin poissuljettua olisi se, että me olisimme tänä iltana päässeet kuvaamaan hotelliin sisään. Ja kaikkein eniten poissuljettua tuntui olevan se, että olisimme saaneet kuvata sen huoneen, missä nimellä Kim Andersen tänne hotelliin kirjoittautunut tanskalaismurhaaja asui. Kaiken kaikkiaan tuo pidätysoperaatio tapahtui äärimmäisen vähän huomiota herättäen.
No tuossa oli tuon rautatieaseman parkkipaikalla oli 2 poliisia. Yksi oli siviilimallinen ja yksi oli sitten tunnuksilla oleva ja 4 poliisia siinä oli vaikka puhelimet korvassa taikka mitkä niillä on sitten viestivälineenä.
Näittekö tässä hotellin edustalla minkään sortin poikkeavaa liikehdintää?
Ei, tässä ihan normaali kävely ja ihmiset tuli tätä niin poispäin, mutta sitten tuolta Saariston tehtaan takaa, niin sieltä oli iso valkoinen pakettiauto tähän eteen ja sitten sen jälkeen ne poliisit oli tuossa vielä niin muutama hetken ja ne lähti pois aseman aukealta.
Oletteko kuullut esimerkiksi toiselta taksin kuljettajilta, että olivatko poliisit pitkään tuossa aseman edustalla väijyksissä?
Ei ole mitään, ei ole kukaan puhunut mitään. Paitsi tuossa, kun vein Parolaan tästä Hämeenlinnasta kyytiin, niin siellä ei, vaan siellä on sitten pari kyytiä sitä jälkeenpäin, niin sanoi ihmiset, jotka oli tullut päivällä Parolan taksista, että Hämeenlinnaan, niin siellä olisi kuulemma ilmoitettu Parolan autolle, että saattaa olla, oletetaan, että se liikkuu tälle, että ollaan niin kuin varovaisia näin.
Missä vaiheessa te saitte tiedon, että tässä oli todellakin tämä raaka murhaaja pidätetty?
No vaimo soitti mulle autoon, se oli kuullut 7 uutisista jotain telekassa ja sanoi, että Hämeenlinnassa on pidätetty hotellin vaakunan tykönä tämä murhaaja ja ei se sen kummempaa. Mä sanoin, että soittele lisää, jos kuulet, ja sitä rupesi tulemaan joka puolta radiokanavista sitten. Että...
Tieto poliisimurhaajan pidätyksestä otettiin vapautuneesti vastaan Helsingin poliisilaitoksella.
Todella huojentavalta tuntuu, sillä tämä jos mikä niin on ollut viime päivinä Suomen poliisille tosi raskas tilanne ja nyt ollaan tosiaan huojentuneita.
Te olette nyt lähes partion yöksi, lauantai yöksi. Miltä se tuntuu lähteä? Pelottaako enemmän tai vähemmän?
No varmaankin vähemmän pelottaa. Kun tietää, että tämmöinen tunnoton poliisin vihaaja, niin nyt on sitten kiinni. Tämmöistä aikaisemmin ei osannut pelätäkään, että Suomessa voisi joku suhtautua poliisiin tuolla tavalla, että tekee poliisille tommosen teon.
If you noticed the statement given by the taxi driver from the taxi stand of the train station, from where he watched the event and how he said that there were people going back and forth between the train station and the hotel all the time, and he mentions nothing but 2 patrol cars in the square of the train station, and then a big white minivan came from behind the Varakanmäki factory area. These statements mean that the police had not built any cordon around the hotel because the only police cars that the eyewitness had seen were located in the square of the train station. This activity with all the unclear cases and the lies of the police clearly indicates that these events in Hämeenlinna have been on the field completely different from what is painted in the media about police cordons and Christensen as a sadistic killer, which has been the complete opposite alongside the lies of the police and what the people who met him have said about Christensen. Based on this, it can be said that all the police's statements about the events of the Sokos Hotel Varkuna are lies, along with the massive sieges that Christensen went through for the second time. This arrest of Christensen was most obviously a friendly way of getting into the car without handcuffs, which I have not seen on Christensen in any picture or in the news. Christensen has apparently been with the police all this time, and he moved together with the police to the Varakanmäki where his arrest was made with full consent and for which there are no eyewitnesses, and none of the police who were involved in this arrest gave any interviews. The aftermath of the arrest. In the midst of all this massive show by the police, which included the siege of Sokos Hotel Varkuna, of which there are only 1 poor eyewitness observations, and what Christensen went through for 4 times at the best tells the level of this scam, which only purpose is to hide the truth behind the execution of Holsti and Palo and scroll the reasons for the act on the shoulders of the Danish Steen Christensen, which can't really be found other than the false statements of Juha Rautaimo and Esko Peltola. The events of the Sokos Hotel Varkuna, where none of the hotel employees agreed to comment on the incident or what happened at the hotel on Saturday. Christensen has had the whole day of Saturday to be completely alone in his solitude, which includes all 3 suicide attempts that the Finnish police have told the public about through the media, which is Christensen's story heard, which is a lie. But this Christensen's story is a story told in his own mouth, which the Finnish police's violent crime unit team wants Christensen to tell. Christensen, who did not succeed in suicide after taking prescribed pain medication with alcohol, and after waking up from this, he attempted suicide by cutting his wrists with razor blades. After that, based on what the police said, he had gone to the shore of the hotel in a cold boat with all the booze and remains there to wait for death, and if the police had been monitoring him since Friday, this is where Christensen could have been arrested without resistance, drunk on drugs and alcohol. This is just a reflection of Juha Rautaimo's own imagination, from the violent crime unit team of the Finnish Stupid Group and its golden Mercedes-Benz and bulldozer of crime scenes, who should have stayed writing children's detective stories rather than to come soloing in the ranks of the Finnish blue team of stupids, but for sure it is a gift from a heaven to me as an independent crime reporter of Finland and all the innocent citizens of Finland who had to die because of this Rautaimo and his team who has hunted these unprofitable citizens of Finland to the grave prematurely, and which is the sick fantasy of the most insane president of the Finnish history and the next one after Nazi Hitler, the White King of the National Coalition and little bit Waco Sauli the two-faced Niinisto. Esko Peltola and Kurt Gronlund, who only sing the songs of Juha Rautaimo and his team, which only tells you the corruption rate of this Finnish blue team of stupids and how they all agreed that these two Finnish police officers, Eero Holsti and Torno Palo, were murdered because of the orders came from the very top of the Finnish decision makers, and the cover story from these assassination is on the shoulders of the Finnish blue team of stupids, which is very fine to me, because if there would be a better agents on the side of the Finnish police, like in the case of Sweden, I have no solution to give based on these murders. If you look at these news broadcasts about Christensen, who based on the police lies and media coverage was supposed to be an unpredictable and sadistic police killer who in Finland among the people had caused massive public praise that he met during the chase. People contact with Christensen praised him as a smart, pleasant and handsome young man, and in the same time Finnish police were chasing him with their own SWAT team like a mad goose. After the arrest, the Finnish police drove Christensen like a diplomat at the time with a brand new civilian Toyota Corolla to the Helsinki Police Department. He was brought to court in a civilian minivan and he walks the corridors without handcuffs like a free man, which is the complete opposite of what the police tell the public about Christensen in his own words as a sadistic cop killer. Christensen, who was treated like an undercover agent who was driven around without handcuffs in new civilian cars, even though he was convicted of murdering two police officers, is completely different from, for example, the case of Abdurrahman Bouanania, who murdered two civilians. Pseudonyms of Christensen. Christensen, who came to Finland on a Swedish ship using the pseudonym Martin Thorgerson and checked into Sokos Hotel Varkuna under the name Kim Andersson. This kind of activity is familiar to me in connection with the murder of Martin Luther King Jr., the second part of which has yet to be written, which will deal with lawyer scams. But I will tell you about it in this context because in connection with Christensen's role, these fake pseudonyms have been used, whose persons have been part of the deception, with the help of which these assassinations have been promoted, even by Earl Ray, on behalf of which has certainly worked in both directions. These aliases, Kim Andersson and Martin Thorgerson, are not necessarily empty pseudonyms, but real persons with whom Steen Christensen worked in Finland and with whom he apparently came to Finland and moved with them when this assassination of Holst and Palo was being prepared behind the scenes. The use of these pseudonyms is apparently imitated from these assassination projects in the United States from the 60s, but they have the downside that they don't really work in the 21st century, because nowadays in Finland, and even in the late 90s, using a pseudonym is really difficult because it almost always requires showing an identity card, and not these cards can be faked or created by anyone other than the authority itself, which would link it to almost 100% complicity in these Teton K2 murders. But I don't think that any European country actually makes fake identity cards for the police's own professional criminals, even if it could be just one part of the Finnish police's earning logic, alongside the drug trade led from its own headquarters by Giuliano. So what really remains is only the real people who are deliberately combined with Christensen's pseudonyms, so that it would not be revealed that Christensen has traveled with these people in Finland and that they have been part of this assassination project, what the Finnish police is trying to cover up with all kind of tricks and lies. alias Kim Anderson. If you look at how mysterious an event Christensen's arrest was in a hotel Varkuna, whose employees do not agree to any interviews, unlike the salespeople of Hämeenlinna stores such as Jim and Jill, Hailuoi and the town hall pharmacy who clearly recognized Christensen from the pictures in the news, it may very well be that Christensen was not even Soko's Hotel Varkuna because this hotel only includes an interview with the hotel's manager, Veli-Pekka Pillinen, whose word I unfortunately do not trust at the same extent as the word of Jim and Jill's 21-year-old saleswoman Henna Aronen, who has no any reason to lie and who are not connected to this incompetence of the Finnish police and its fake detectives like Juha Rautaimo. Aronen, who recognized Christensen from the news photos, which as a statement comes from an honest Finnish citizen and not from the Finnish dirty cops like Jari Aunio or Juha Rautaimo. This means that Christensen has certainly moved in the center of Hämeenlinna in the shops, the purpose of which was purely to produce eyewitness observations related to the Tetan K2 murders, which are brought through statements of the honest citizens which then start to spread among them. This works for a while when no one stands up in front of these most incredible lies of the Finnish police. Kim Anderson is not necessarily an alias for Christensen, but a real person named Kim Anderson who has been part of the people required for the realization of this operation, whose role is of course a question mark whether it included something more than just staying at the Sokos Hotel Varkuna, such as driving around Helsinki and Hämeenlinna with Christensen. Alias Martin Thogerson. Martin Thogerson's role has remained significantly smaller in the media, where he has only been reported in connection with the ship trip with whom Christensen came to Finland. The police do not say directly, but they hint that the Pietarin K211 apartment was rented under Thogerson's name. This would mean that these people have been in really strong contact with these accommodation services by renting them, which Christensen has not done with false personal information, which at the latest has been verified by Veli-Pekka Pillinen from a person who signed into hotel under the name Kim Anderson, whose identity card or passport reads Kim Anderson, because he was really Kim Anderson, and not Steen Christensen. Kim Anderson, who is just a one person related to these police murders of Tetan K2, with the help of it can be taken to finish line together with Steen Christensen and all Finnish authority who was involved in these murders. These fake aliases of Christensen is just a fairy tales of the Finnish police what they are trying to feed to the people through the fake media and in which they tried to cover up and bury the existence of these real people, a Danish people who were involved in these police murders by playing their own role, just like Steen Christensen did. For this reason, the manager of Sokos Hotel Varkuna, Veli-Pekka Pillinen, should at least be re-examined at this point, as to why he was by accidentally at the clerk's place to register Christensen under the wrong name to the hotel. The position that actually belongs to the clerk who was hired for this task and not to the hotel's manager. Or did Pillinen have his own role in this story of the police murders by signing in Kim Anderson and later song the dirty lies of the Finnish police and talking Kim Anderson as one of the aliases of Steen Christensen? Pillinen, who seems to have much smaller role than his colleague, the porter of Hotel Palace, Mikko Tartinen, who has not passed my criminal examinations with clean papers with his own interviews, which means for him that the robbery of Hotel Palace was fake, staged and part of an alibi with the help of which the murders of Holsti and Palo are blamed on Christensen, when the real murderers fleeing the scene. I will tell about the story of Mikko Tartinen, the porter of Hotel Palace, in its own title. Of course, I would like to say that Anderson and Thogerson are the executioners of Holsti and Palo, but unfortunately nothing currently supports this claim because I don't know their backgrounds and what kind of backgrounds do they have. Are they Danish authorities, for example, because they have come to Finland and have been linked to such shocking executions together with Steen Christensen and the Finnish authorities. If these fake names of Steen Christensen, Kim Andersson and Martin Thogerson, who are real people, have special training for the police or the army, they would immediately rise to the top of my criminal investigations as the executioners of Holst and Palo, because it is not worth dragging persons with special training from Denmark for anything other than these executions. Otherwise Holst and Palo's executioners can be found in the ranks of the Finnish police or the Finnish army who have been trained to do this kind of brutal executions targeting to the people who also carries arms. Steen Christensen. If you look at how much connection this case has with the Finnish authorities, which means almost without exception completely false statements from the police, and how the normal operating models of the Finnish police in Finland have been the drug trade led by Jari Aunio from the police headquarters and Seppo Selänpää's bank robberies with the help of the Honda League, the perpetrators of which spent all the money on drugs that was at that time Jari Aunio's double life and outside and inside of office hours. This means that this Honda League laundered this bank robbery money with the help of Jari Aunio's drug trade, and whose loot money was apparently distributed among all dirty cops related to these bank robberies of Honda League in the basements of the Finnish police headquarters, where this Europe's biggest organized crime league led by Aunio, Rautaimo and Tolvanen operate at the time. And this list of crimes by the Finnish police and the highest state decision-makers in Finland is longer than my articles, including the murder of Tuomas Trisvuori in Uganda, where he was even lured by a misleading assignment of the arms manufacturer Patria. The murder and the main perpetrator of Trisvuori, which is the coalition ex-minister Suvi Linden, who was in Uganda together with Trisvuori to make sure that he will come back to Finland in a coffin. This would mean that, at the same time, the Danish police have had the same operating models as the Finnish police regarding crimes, where the bank robberies of the Danish police could have differed in details from Seppo Selänpää's bank robberies with the help of the Honda League, and as it differed, because according to the story, Christensen did not take cocaine and other drugs that decrease brain function before the bank robberies, such as Seppo Selänpää's Honda League, and whose actions will bring down the beautiful jewelry phrases on the facades of the Finnish police as law enforcers. Steen Christensen, who has clearly acted as a substitute for the Danish Honda League, where the Danish police at that time also robbed banks with the help of Steen Christensen, whose money was wasted in casinos, and not in Jari Aunio's drug trade, like the Honda League did. Seppo Selänpää, who had no intention of arresting this Honda League, who were allowed to rob Finnish banks in the 90s for 2 years and whose loot remained approximate 20 banks whose robbery money was used for drugs, which was Jari Aunio's double life at the time, which means that the Finnish police robbed these banks in Finland in the 90s and whose robbery money was laundered in Jari Aunio's drug trade, which behavior suggests that Christensen has been a similar police professional criminal in Denmark, with which Danish banks have been robbed in good cooperation with Danish police and whose loot money was not laundered in drug trade like with the Honda League, but Christensen's money was laundered with the help of casinos. When countries with such a connection collide on my criminal investigation lists and even together in connection with the Teton K2 police murders, it clearly tells about the cooperation between the countries, between the authorities, and how the authorities are behind these executions on Teton K2 with the help of and through massive cooperation. Behind facades where only disinformation, false statements are shown to the people, or best of all, life prisoners are presented to the people as scapegoats, on the necks of which such executions are practically free, just like Mijailo Mijailovic, who beats the elderly with iron pipes at the expense of the Swedish state authorities, who do not even give a life sentence to a life prisoner. In my eyes, there is a huge link between Denmark and Finland because of Christensen came from Denmark to Finland play his role as scapegoat with all these fake pseudonyms that seem to be a real person who have managed these accommodation services for Christensen using their own names, which the Finnish police are trying to bury under these fake pseudonyms. Christensen, who came to Finland to play his own role in this assassination project that were carried out with the help of the Finnish blue team of stupids and whose incompetence at that time were at maximum, thanks to its golden Mercedes-Benz, Jurianio and his kind of like Juha Rautaimo and Kari Tolvanen, who I should be thankful for my career as crime investigator. Denmark, which has poked its own nose into the basements of Jurianio, the golden Mercedes-Benz of the Finnish police, has such a stamp on its own clean fakeids that the authorities of any country do not want on their own beautiful fakeids, if there are illegal activities behind them. Denmark, which sent its own version of Seppo Selänpää's Honda League, i.e. the Batman robber to Finland, which at that time was the kingdom of Jurianio, drug lord of the Finnish police and the big boss of the underworld, and all who are related to this dirty cop of the Finnish police expose itself to on which side of the law you are dealing with, and it seems that the Danish police has the same criminal activities behind the fakeids than the Finnish police have, when they send Steen Christensen to Finland for the use of the Finnish police, which was at the time the biggest organized crime league in Europe, however, without no real talents and no professional competence, which is mainly ridiculous. Litigation. Christensen's trial, which was a dummy model, which included the recognition of all the charges that the Finnish stupid group accuses Christensen of, but which are actually crimes committed by the Finnish authorities and not by Christensen, who takes the murders of these policemen, Holsti and Palo, on his own shoulders, because the Finnish authorities cannot carry murder sentences on their own shoulders because it would turn Finland into an authoritarian dictatorship of the authorities. And what is that about these police murders? A trial that was a dummy model is not an unfamiliar concept to me in Finland as a crime reporter either, but I have seen a similar one in connection with the fake kidnapping of Minna Nurminen of the Cone Elevator family, where both parties, Minna Nurminen and the presumed culprit, Juha Turunen, did not appeal the district court's verdict, as in many other Finnish cases, because these cases in which the Finnish authorities have sweat on their foreheads, so to speak, they want to quickly get rid of these legal proceedings and the judgments into the public awareness. Regarding these facts, the legal proceedings are not taken to other levels. Steen Christensen, who walks like a tourist in the corridors of a travel agency when he has murdered 2 policemen, when the real murderer is on the other side, Abdurrahman Bouanain, who stabbed 2 women in the Turku market, and this is what it should look like for Christensen too if he had really committed the murders of Holsti and Palo out of his own will and alone, and was not just taking the blame for these police murders of Holsti and Palo, who was executed by the Finnish authorities.
Halppa ja zippi, halppa. On niin, että vastaaja on ihan hiljaa. Samel puhuminen. Bibnädem kirjel kahpam.
Jos minä olen halpa, niin sinä olet ilmainen.
Halppa ja zippi, rakhas, rakhas. Se on nyt semmoinen tilanne. Rakhas ja qalawi. Ciao. Älä bdi zamel puhun. Zamel puhun.
These 2 cases, Abdurrahman Bouanain and Steen Christensen, are as different as night from day, where Christensen, as the executioner of his false deeds, i.e. Holst and Palo, should receive an even worse punishment and treatment than Buonain, which proves the level of bias and corruption of the Finnish judiciary, where the confessor of official crimes is treated like a diplomat while the other party to such an act is forced to medicate in the human rat farms of the coalition, whose refusal is interpreted as opposition to the official, which leads in the case of Buonania to be resentenced to the corrupt Finnish courts. But fortunately this does not have a great effect in the case of Buonania because he will obviously no longer spend his time on the free side of society, and why Finland as a state is trying to get all these life prisoners for human rat farms of the National Coalition, aka National Cleansing for Medical Use. Forensic mental state examination.
Mielentilatutkimuksessa Christensen luokitellaan erittäin vaaralliseksi rikoksen uusijaksi. Terveydenhuollon oikeusturvakeskuksen mukaan 33-vuotias Christensen on älykäs, käyttäytyy pinnallisen sulavasti ja kykenee jäsentyneeseen ja suunnitelmalliseen toimintaan. Christensenillä on kuitenkin persoonallisuushäiriö. Hän on empatiakyvytön, eli vailla myötätuntoa toisia kohtaan. Christensenin kyky sietää turhautumista on heikko ja hän on myös arvaamattoman väkivaltainen. Christensenin tekee erityisen vaarallisiksi se, kun älykkyys ja pinnallisuus yhdistyvät persoonallisuushäiriöön.
If you read what kind of evaluation Christensen has received from the mental state examination when he caused the maximum amount of positive feedback from the people he was dealing with in Hämeenlinna, everyone understands that these mental state examinations have nothing to do with the truth, but they work 100% to smear the reputation of the accused in the eyes of the people and are used to advantage in the courts if necessary, as excuses for harsher sentences. These completely unfounded statements about Christensen originate from the side of people with severe intellectual disabilities, who are trying to smear the reputation of completely healthy people, whose perpetrators, i.e. forensic psychiatrists themselves, are mentally ill, because they act and use medicine on false grounds when they blame the personality disorders of people with severe intellectual disabilities on healthy people in shocking acts to whom maximum blame is desired. This subfield, i.e. medical psychiatry in Finland, is under the patronage of the White King of the Coalition and little bit Waco Sauli the Two-Face Niinisto, whose institution in Kuopio is led by the coalition's own municipal politician Kari Ohala, whose domain is feeding pregnant mothers with drugs that lower brain functions for post-pregnancy depression, psychiatric drugs under the influence of which these family mothers drown their own children, and this action is done only because these medically non-existent and imaginary diseases of psychiatry gain credibility among the people, and when it is done in such a shocking way and under the guise of imaginary diseases. With this action, the coalition and its mad doctors, together with the most insane president in Finnish history ever, and the next one immediately after Nazi Hitler, Sauli the Two-Face Niinisto and his friend club from the University of Turku, which includes Jarmo Hietala, Hasse Karlsson and Walter Major Helena, which are systematically driving into Finland a new minority group called those suffering from mental health problems and problem citizens who are unprofitable to the state, who suffer from psychiatry's imaginary diseases, on the basis of which they are fed drugs used in the treatment of cancer for autumn depression, which will kill these persons within 2 to 3 years. This activity is the sick dream of the most mentally deranged president in Finnish history who ever lived, and the immediate successor of Nazi Hitler, Sauli the last Niinisto, with which he can get rid of all problem citizens who are unprofitable to the state by feeding them drugs used in the treatment of cancer, which will lead these persons to an early grave or, best of all, to the medical centers of the coalition human rat farms for the illegal medical brain research of Walter Major Helena. a researcher of the University of Turku who used these human rats of medicine in her illegal medical brain studies. Human rats that are bound by forced treatment laws to imaginary diseases, which means that in their name, these patients can be fed any chemical compound that Walter Major Helena wants to study the functioning of the brains of these human rats, which is almost what the Nazi Mengele did with Jews in the name of medicine at that time. And if you can understand the core of the illegal activities of these two authorities, which includes, on the side of the Finnish police, Giuliano's drug trade led from the police headquarters, and Seppo Selenpää's bank robberies with the help of the Honda League, whose robbery money was laundered with the help of Giuliano's drug trade, among all the dirty people in the police's basements who were involved in these robberies, as well as the illegals of medical psychiatry medical examinations on patients of the prison mental hospital which are carried out in the name of imaginary diseases. These executions of Eero Holst and Antero Palo on Tetan K2 are only part of this ring-rung, where the authorities do everything illegal behind the facades from which the media tells 98% alternative truth which can be read as a lie. International cooperation. This activity testifies to the patterns of cooperation between countries where these persons like Christensen are used, in this case as scapegoats for the murders of police officers, and which can be seen in the case of Jan Raninen, who murdered Dragan Joksovic in Sweden. There is no denying Raninen's guilt in the shooting, unlike Christensen's, who had executed 2 police officers alone on Tetan K2. This performance of Jan Raninen is completely different from shooting unarmed civilian from behind than disarm 2 experienced police officer and execute them on street. The same can be clearly seen in the case of Mijalo Mijalovic, the murderer of Anna Lind, who murdered Anna Lind at the request of the highest persons of the state, who are trying to bury it under mental health problems. However, Mijalovic's connection to the highest decision-makers of the state is revealed most clearly in the treatment of the Swedish judiciary and the entire authority field in Mijalovic's direction, where Sweden uses Mijalovic as an intermediary, with the help of which Mijalovic hands out punishments in physical form in prisons and mental hospitals, where he is allowed to confront the elderly with iron pipes, which produces a fatal effect on those left in front of Mijalovic's rage. These abuses of Mijalovic are practically free because he already has a life sentence under him, so it is really strange how the Swedish authorities are not able to root out this activity, where Mijalovic distributes the right of his own hands in the Swedish official institutions, apparently under the approval of the Swedish authorities. This same cooperation can also be seen with Anders Behring Breivik and the Norwegian state, because Breivik has no motive to murder 77 children, but the state has, if it wants to raise a new minority group on earth called people with mental health problems, for whom such actions that shock society are the expected outcome, where freedom ends. The cooperation between Breivik and the decision-makers of the Norwegian state can be clearly seen in how the Norwegian judiciary allows Breivik to sue the Norwegian state for human rights violations, which the Norwegian decision-makers only allow because they want to raise anger and rage in the people. These 4 people, Jan Raninen, Steen Christensen, Mijalo Mijalovic and Anders Behring Breivik, are united by the same verbal agreement with high decision-makers, because all of them are involved in crimes that have nothing to do with these defendants, but they commit and take the blame for something that democratic states' leaders cannot take on their necks. But all these 4 acts have been done only by the wishes of the highest decision-makers of the state, where these accused individuals only act as bearers of the message. Jan Raninen, who not only has to be the scapegoat for Joksovic's murder, but he can very well play the role of the executioner when it's an unarmed civilian, But Christensen can't be anything other than a scapegoat because disarming 2 police during the alert and executing them on Teton K2 requires several people who have either a police special training or training equivalent to army personnel, which both Jan Raninen and Steen Christensen lack of experience. Geranios International Assassination Team. This cooperation between states comes to light through Geranios' mess-ups and how he has executed problem citizens who are not profitable to the Finnish state, such as Veli Gron and Kari Tarvanainen, where Tarvanainen's nominal girlfriend at the time was Ina Aronen, whose apartment Volkan Unsel was murdered in. Aronen, who joined Tarvanainen's inner circle, was of course the best eavesdropping device for Geranios when this duo was drawn to Arnio's drug business, which contained numerous criminal organizations that were under Arnio's orders and ready to execute people for even the slightest reason in Helsinki in the 90s, and through whom Arnio handed out sentences in the dark alleys of Helsinki, as in the case of Gron and Tarvanainen, with neck shots. The way Gron and Tarvanainen were executed fits well with the executions of Holsti and Palo on Teton K2 and how this model of operation is the Finnish police's way of working and solving their internal problems without rule of law practices. Volkan Unsel, who was murdered in an apartment rented by Ina Aronen, whose first subtenant was Keijo Vilhunen, that is, Geranios' right-hand man from the underworld, after which Unsel's murderer, Jani Lainanen, moved into the apartment. This combination proves that Ina Aronen was part of Unsel's murder and part of Arnio's gang, which included Jani Lainanen, Raimo Andersson, Jan Raninen and Keijo Vilhunen. Arnio, who is clearly behind the murders of Gron and Tarvanainen, based on his manner of doing it and when his bait girl, Ina Aronen, was able to lure his nice ass into girlfriend of Tarvanainen, and how Gron and Tarvanainen, based on the news leaked to the media, were involved in the drug trade, which was Geranios' double life, and all the murders that have targeted Ina Aronen's close circle are murder cases organized by Geranios and the Finnish police, which use these criminal organizations and the people on their lists in these executions, like Gron and Tarvanainen, because it would be quite strange if the Finnish police, in addition to all this criminal activity, put these death sentences behind the fakids into practice themselves, these victims of official corruption, by executing them in dark alleys. Criminal organizations whose existence I wondered about in the early days of my career, but which no longer causes surprise at all, because with their help the Finnish police and state decision-makers can roll their own executions and death sentences announced behind the fakids with the help of the leaders of these criminal organizations and their members onto their necks, which due to their own social status, they can carry, unlike in our country decision-makers like Suvi Linden, who has begun to slip away from these labels of democratic state decision-makers, when it seems that he has so much inner fire for these murders that he currently goes to Uganda to poison the coalition's unwanted MPs, which as a holiday trip clearly beats hunting endangered animals in the savannas with dentists. Finnish Blue Team of Stupids clearly rhymes with the National Coalition of Finland's leading party, not only on the basis of the blue color, but also in the form of common hobbies, which includes assassinations inside and outside the borders of the Finnish state. Finnish Blue Team of Stupids in both groups, the police NAD. The coalition has clearly put their stupid heads together with its insane president ever in the history of Finland, and the one immediately after the Nazi Hitler, Sauli the Two-Face Niinisto, under whose protection this human trafficking in Finland is what is the human rat business of medicine practiced by the University of Turku, where problem citizens who are unprofitable to the state are subjugated under the control of Turku. University researcher Walter Major Helena and her illegal medical studies in the name of financial margins and the common good, of course. This manhunt that the Finnish police engages in together with the insane decision makers of the national coalition by dragging these disadvantaged persons to an early grave with the help of the protection brought by the criminal world on the side of the authorities, because no citizens dragged into this business of the Finnish police and Jyriainio are dare to come tell it to anyone, like we see the case of Gron and Tarvanainen, who had to sold all their property so that they could give money to Jyriainio, the big boss of the Finnish drug trade, but which led only to their executions. But who would be the party that would take the representatives of this national coalition to the court for this illegal human trafficking, where the Finnish authorities loyal to the coalition like Jyriainio hand out death sentences on the streets of Helsinki with the help of criminal organizations which as a judgments are apparently accepted on a shared right as a result of some kind of illegal activity. But this system is bypassing the legal system, and what makes it so weird, that it is the Finnish police who is bypassing this legal system that should be on their use for judging, but it seems that it is much exciting to hand out these death sentences on the street. National coalition and the Finnish decision makers under whose approval these death sentences being done and execute, because it is apparently quite difficult to convict these people because they have not directly done anything wrong, especially if the other side is the human rat business run by the coalition with problem citizens who are unprofitable to the state. This activity that the Finnish police and decision makers engage in with criminal organizations defines organized crime to a completely different level than it is known among the people in general. That is, that the background of these shocking executions is the Finnish police itself, which distributes these death sentences through criminal organizations in the dark alleys of Helsinki, which is the responsibility of the state's decision makers and the coalition-approved activity, all of which, based on illegal activity, the police themselves are seeking grounds and financial compensation for their own pathetic skills in the name of crime prevention, even though the police themselves are behind these crimes, where criminal organizations under the control of the Finnish police, of course, play a large role in this cartwheel that the police and nominal criminal gangs run together, the price tag of which is the life of problem citizens who are unprofitable to the state. The Finnish police, who have been allowed to carry out this activity without an internal investigation in a country where there is really a one-party system that comes from university-educated MPs who are united by the interest of the state, and why has the Finnish police been allowed to act like this for decades, and with the help of whose corrupt activities they have been able to bury their own murder convictions in unsolved folders, and as they have tried to do with the case of Gron, Tarvanainen and the case of Holsti and Palo, who were executed on Tetan-K2. These police covert operations will fail due to Jyriainio's incompetence and loitering on the streets of Helsinki together with his bait bird, Iina Aronen. And if, in the light of these events, we move to the time on the 4th of February 1998, when Jan Raninen murdered Dragan Joksovic, who was reportedly a criminal whom the Swedish state could not arrest due to insufficient evidence, then was this murder by Jan Raninen committed under the authority of Jyriainio, who sold his own services to Sweden, just like Denmark sold its own scapegoat services to Finland in the form of Steen Christensen when it freed and sent Christensen to Finland with the help of prison holidays, where he came to take the blame for the executions of Holst and Palo on the Tetan-K2, completely unjustified, of course, because Christensen is not the executioner of Holst and Palo, but the scapegoat carrying the sentences resulting from their murders on his own shoulders. If these murders are carried out with the help of interstate cooperation, it is clear that a working citizen cannot understand this kind of corruption, hoax, fraud, fake, or whatever you wanna call this show, that covers the truth, and the whole truth about these murders, whose fake perpetrators are foreigners and who came to play their own role on these assassination projects as a scapegoat, just like Steen Christensen did, or an executioner, just like Jan Raninen did, which indicates the Existence of interstate cooperation between countries, because these persons like Joksovic were not caught directly for any crime, which means that he is at least innocent in front of the legal system, but not some people, and why Raninen shot him dead. These death cases such as Dragan Joksovic, Anna Lindh and Olof Palme are united by the fact that they have done something that goes against the values of the Swedish King Carl Gustaf, but which are not recorded in any law as crimes, as in the case of Anna Lindh when she supports the common euro currency, which would have taken the Swedish krona from Carl Gustaf from the history books. Lindh, who was taking away Carl Gustaf's daughter, Victoria's crown of fame in the eyes of the people, and all of this. She criticized the US military campaigns from the position of the Swedish foreign minister, and why she died in the day of 9/11, on September 11, 2003, which was a somewhat contradictory action even in my eyes. But that it would be involved in Anna Lindh's murder is wrong in my opinion. But I have an article and video coming from this topic as also, because Anna Lindh is on my criminal investigation list, which is the best defense since my predecessor, the world's biggest woman ever, walked on this planet or any other where Elon Musk sent his rockets, Sophie Scholl and White Rose. It is difficult to say what was the motive for Olof Palme's murder, but if we look at the United States, John F. Kennedy was murdered only because he was on the side of ordinary people. He opposed the war and was the leader of all who should have been allowed to lead this planet, and this resulted in Kennedy's death. And this same thing can also be the background of Olof Palme's murder, putting the Swedish people before the king as prime minister, which is already demonstrably leading to death, and which is already evidenced by the murder of Anna Lindh. Imprisonment. States that have clearly created an opportunity for the accused to choose where they will serve their prison terms, such as in the case of Jan Raninen and Christensen, where both served their prison terms in their own state, which only falls more on the side of interstate cooperation, because if police murders are viewed from the perspective that if the cases were not assassinations ordered by the highest state decision makers, the last act would be to let Christensen enjoy the good conditions of the Danish prison, while in Finland he could be kept in extremely bad conditions if the key is so desired, and the punishment would be maximally unpleasant. This can be seen in the context of the Pori's crossbow murders, where Alexander Sikkinen has been placed in prison conditions that are even better than the elderly services in Finland. Sikkinen, whose prison offer includes PlayStation games, buffet meals 3 times a day, a library and movie services that can be ordered on a government bill, clearly reveals that these 2 girls are murdered in cooperation with the Pori police and medical care, and this Pori shelter service, which only tells the harsh truth that all these services with their happy message are only to attract the disadvantaged into the circle of these services where they are murdered, and what can be seen in the psychiatric clinics of medical care whose services Yale's propaganda machine advertises like Christmas throughout the year in the hope of a new life, but in which there is nothing but the murders of these citizens, which are hidden under deliberately caused accidents. And as for these police scapegoats, I don't think that Christensen has actually spent a month longer in Finnish prisons than the maximum, like Alexander Sikkinen. Where are the buffet tables if you watch these videos where Christensen is being transported in a new civilian car to the Helsinki police station and in a minivan to the district court, and at no point did I see handcuffs, let alone any arrest photos that were taken in the dark at Hämeenlinna's Varakaniemi after sunset. No one can really prove that Christensen would have sat in prison in modern Finland, which even included a transfer to Denmark on a civilian plane. Can you imagine? This should be a police killer whose treatment is 100% a scapegoat or state agent bought by the police, who took the blame for these murders of Holsti and Palo, whose perpetrators may be Finnish police officers, Finnish army personnel or Danish authorities. Christensen, who was finally flown under extremely secret security measures on a plane with the police, apparently means security measures with the help of which it has been concealed how freely Christensen has moved around the airport and where he actually arrived at the airport, because it may very well be possible that this scapegoat of the Finnish police has not been sitting for a week longer in these prisons of Martti Ahtisaari, the owner of the Nobel Peace Prize at the time, which is also supported by how freely Christensen was transported in civilian cars during police killings. Assassination. But what really happened on Tetanketu, whose executions have been placed solely on the shoulders of Steen Christensen? I have now explained all the inconsistencies regarding the police murders that have been the handiwork of the Finnish Police Violent Crime Unit and its bulldozer of crime scenes, Juha Rautaimo, and I have never had such a piece of shit case on my investigation tables as these police murders have been, which are full of contradictions and secret arrests of suspects on remote jogging paths after sunset, which we'll ride like diplomats after this in civilian cars without handcuffs. I have deliberately left the murders of Holst and Palo in the last part of my video because it is an extremely systematic and orderly murder done by the Finnish authorities, which is covered up by the credibility of the police in terms of the statements they spread through the media to the people, which is, however, only fake news and disinformation, and I would hope that Christensen's escape, part 1 of this video which I introduced earlier, would work like a restaurant appetizer for the main course itself, which in this case is the executions of Holsti and Palo on the crime scene at Tetanketu, which we go by next. Tetanketu police murders, whose triggering signal came from the positions of state ministers, and whose executions have been carried out by someone other than the young, beautiful and nice Steen Christensen, who has only played a poker in casinos with his robbery money from his previous gigs, and judging from the effectiveness of the murders of Holst and Palo, the people who have been behind these murders have received special training from either the police or the army. This operating model, where state decision makers and authorities use a paid scapegoat, on which the sentences for crimes committed by the desire of decision makers are rolled over because of their position, because democratic states and their decision makers cannot carry such murders on their own shoulders due to their position, because it would turn these states into authoritarian police states and authority dictatorship countries, which acts against all the slogans of a democratic state. The way I'm going to bring up the murders of Holst and Palo is that I'm going to solve this through planning, because it's clearly one part of the work of this Finnish police, namely to build a believable story about the policeman they murdered that can be shown to the public, which definitely includes the accused who confesses everything and take the blame on himself. Crime scene is Tetanketu. These police murders must have included activities before the murders, just like all the cases in the world that I have investigated, such as the assassination of John F. Kennedy, where getting him to Dallas and planning his vehicle parade in front of the Texas School Book Depository has played a very central role in the success of Kennedy's assassination, the building of which the 6th floor was formed a perfectly good line to shoot Kennedy at a moving car without much advance of aim. In the case of police murders, this crime scene where Holsti and Palo were executed was clearly chosen from the Tetanketu, which is the so-called main thoroughfare of this area, which is driven a lot, and it must somehow be part of the police's patrol route, and why, according to the story, these policemen encountered Christensen right along this road. In my opinion, there are two alternative intersections on Tetanketu where executions like this could have been carried out thanks to their relatively remote location, but all of them have their own disadvantages, which makes the place where Holsti and Palo were killed an overwhelmingly good one. As an intersection, the beginning of Teton K2 could be better because there is only one building there, but nearby is the Russian embassy, whose cameras would not only be watched by the Finnish blue team of stupids and its bulldozer of crime scenes, Juha, so there is too great a risk that Finland would be caught on neutral camera with its own assassination projects. But otherwise, this place could be suitable as a crime scene, although it is a little too open for surprises. The second point could be at this intersection, but driving there involves many intersections where Holsti and Palo could turn away from the tube, which is why this further intersection contains great uncertainty, whether Holsti and Palo would drive all the way here before they have many opportunities to turn away from the upcoming murder scene. This crime scene where Holsti and Palo were executed is simply really good for an ambush and as an intersection before these numerous intersections in Ullanlinna. In this crime scene model, you have to drive this Teton K2 like a tube where there are not many opportunities to turn away from this Teton K2 street. The murder site of Holsti and Palo, which is immediately hidden from the cameras of the Russian embassy. There is a long dark alley where cars are parked next to the road that guarantees good places for killers to stay hidden. Recording of the executions. The intersection of Teton K2 and Kapteenin K2 also has another significant advantage, namely the Meritar Bank office and its really good surveillance cameras where the executions of Holsti and Palo were recorded and caught on surveillance camera tapes and which are currently in the archives of the Finnish Security Intelligence Service, where they are presented to a handful of Finland's highest decision makers and heads of authorities with lemonade and chips, and why it is for sure that the mental state examination given to Christensen has gone to the wrong person. This claim of mine is supported by all the lies that the Finnish police have leaked to the media about the case of Holsti and Palo, and the massive cooperation with which this operation was launched, which included the scapegoat ordered from Denmark to take the verdicts for these murders on their own shoulders. Hotel Palace's Mikko Tartinen and Sokos Hotel Varkunas Veli-Pekka Pillinen, who have also been involved in these murders of Holsti and Palo, but their role is significantly smaller, which mainly includes pouring out false statements from their own mouths, the words of which the Finnish police have put them there. This method of operation is by no means unknown to me, and what I have come across in connection with the assassination of John F. Kennedy, where Abraham Zapruder recorded Kennedy's assassination and his getting lost in the best filming location, is not a coincidence and does not look good in my criminal investigations for him, as far as my statements are concerned. Zapruder, who he has been informed about this place and what towards Kennedy will be shot. Zapruder, who is only one member of this Kennedy assassination and appears in my article JFK Assassination, Eyewitnesses section. The recording of these murders or executions and in general their operation is part of the way the leaders of the Democratic State Authority Dictatorships act and what reveals their true faces that are not brought out through the state propaganda apparatus YLE, which censors every voice that tries to come out from the grassroots level, and is the main reason why I have started to research and publish to my video about the illegal actions of Finnish state decision makers, in which the Finnish police play a large role in the form of their own false statements, and of which these executions of Holst and Palo are the best example. In other words, Meritar Bank's surveillance cameras have pointed directly from the window to the place of execution of Holst and Palo at the intersection. And why did the representative of Meritar Bank not comment on these tapes to ILTA Sonoma, which as a state bank has handed over its own surveillance camera tapes to the secret vaults of the security police? Everyone surely understands at this point how false these mental state examinations are that were also done to Christensen, and which are completely false and contradict the eyewitness observations and statements that are based only on false accounts of a person who must be put in a maximum bad position in the eyes of the people, so that these false judgments like Christensen's are accepted by the people in everything in its inexplicability. The only one to whom these mental state examinations should be done and who they fit like a fist in the eye is Nazi Hitler and the White King of the coalition Sauli, the two-faced Niinisto, whose institution, the Finnish police, is responsible for these murders and who carried them out at the behest of the country's top leadership, which also included Niinisto at that time. The White King of the coalition and little bit Waco Sauli, the two-faced Niinisto who has excavated racial doctrine from the Nazi bunkers, which his university, the University of Turku, presents as mental health problems to the people, in the name of which all dirty tricks of the most ruthless beast on earth, the white man, is known for. Using medicine against humans and subjugating problem citizens into human rats for medicine and killing them in medical care clinics, as happened to Jimmy Cartunin and many others in medical care clinics. Patrol route. Holsti and Palo were patrolling the Kaivapuisto area before the executions, so their route is suitable for moving out of this area, where Alan-Lena and Eira are next in line, and so on. I have to present two alternative routes along which Holst's patrol drove to the Teton K2 ambush. Of course, these two route options don't play a big role because their outcomes, which are the same, the executions of Holsti and Palo, where they have driven along Teton K2 straight into the ambush. Holsti's patrol had started their shift at 19 o'clock, so with an 8-hour shift, their shift would have ended at 3 o'clock. This police station, which was Holst's and Palo's workplace, was located on Little Roberts Street, only 750 meters from the crime scene and where they were most obviously moving to because their executions were very close to 3 o'clock. This police station was located on the other side of the road from the Finnish Ministry of Defense and the Army headquarters, from where the murders of these two policemen were very likely implemented and directed, and in the vicinity of which all the events took place, excluding of course Christensen's escape to Hämeenlinna. Christensen, who had no reasonable explanation for coming to Finland, where he have no friends, where he came with no money, and where he settled in the most expensive area of Helsinki, there is really no reasonable explanation other than what this farce looks like, i.e. Christensen came to play his own role as a scapegoat in these murders of Holst and Palo, whose with him he really has nothing to do but take the blame for these murders on himself, because the Finnish authorities cannot do that, and admit to the people that they murdered Holst and Palo because of some kind of disagreement, which apparently arose from Gerionio's drug trade led from the police headquarters and Seppo Selenpää's bank robberies, which he did with the help of the Honda League and whose robbery money was laundered with the help of Gerionio's drug trade. Assassination as a trigger. According to the police's own story, the trigger for the murder of Holsti and Palo was this Hotel Palace robbery, which, according to the police, started this desperate story, as a result of which these policemen died on Tetan K2, and what has been wanted to tell the public about it. In my criminal investigations, the trigger for everything that was shown to the public through the media has been these executions, done by the Finnish authorities. After their success, an alarm was triggered in Hotel Palace, which together with Christensen's fake robbery only acts as a lightning rod for the attention to be drawn to the irrelevant, that is, Steen Christensen, who has nothing to do with these murders of Holst and Palo, but to be a scapegoat and confess everything that Christensen will ever be accused of. Christensen's admission of these acts has buried the true motives of these murders, who gave them the green light, who carried out these murders, and that the truth of these murders will not be revealed to the public. The absolute best performance of these police murders has come in their organization and execution, but which fell into Steen Christensen's ridiculous escape journey, which is full of contradictions in what the police told and eyewitness observations, as well as cover-up on the part of the police, right from Christensen's arrest and his transport between authorities, which culminated on the flight on which he was taken from Finland to Denmark, apparently without any handcuffs and orange overalls but a civilian clothes like real secret agent. This tells you how above the law Finnish police and decision makers are, and how you can even execute two policemen on the street of Helsinki, which only reveals the true colors of the invisible cloak of a dictatorship. Assassination timeline. 1. Earning a murder conviction. It is difficult to interpret the different stages of the murders of Holst and Palo and where they started, but I use the Martin Luther King Jr. case as a reference, which has been solved all the way to the perpetrator, who was shot by Memphis police officer Edward Reddit. Dr. King's murder has been preceded by a period of time during which he has gathered support for his own murder convictions, which in these cases are put into practice behind facades and where the media together with its fake news plays a big role. Dr. King earned this murder conviction for his personal life that was not supposed to be public and his opposition to the Vietnam War. This time has lasted for several years, during which Dr. King has earned his murder sentence, but it is difficult to say anything about this time for Holst and Palo because the media has not revealed their past to the public like in the case of particularly famous people such as Dr. King was. This time can be short if, for example, the illegal actions of Seppo Selenpää and Gerionio from their police positions have been revealed to Holsti and Palo and why they had to take down in short time. These illegal actions of Gerionio includes all illegalities that can ever be carried out from a police position, such as running a drug trade from police headquarters and all the dead Finnish citizens whose murders have been carried out through and with the help of Finnish criminal organizations that were under Gerionio's influence, such as Volkan Unseli's murder. Unsel, who was murdered in an apartment rented by Gerionio's good friend, Iina Aronen, where the subtenant was Keijo Vilhunen first and then Jani Lainanen, who murdered Unsel together with Raimo Andersson. This group of Gerionio, in other words, organized this murder, and if you look at Gerionio's criminal history in the ranks of the Finnish police, Arnio is not only involved in this murder but he is the initiator of this whole operation because he is the only one who really has anything to lose here. If Volkan Unsel had started singing that it is the Finnish police who run these criminal organizations, drug trade and murder, the lowest caste of the drug trade in the evenings in cooperation with this group. In this context, I would like to say that there is a case like this in the history of Ina, aka Sarah Aronen, from the beginning of the 90s, where her nominal boyfriend and her other friend were executed in a car, which manner of execution is somewhat similar to the executions of Holsti and Palo on Tetan K2, which is more similar to the executions organized by the Finnish police which Holsti and Palo were targeted. Execution of murder plan. Dr. King's murder has been triggered by his Riverside speech, after which almost immediately James Earl Ray's escape from prison was organized, after which a credible story of Dr. King as a murderer who acts as an alibi for Memphis police Edward Reddit and Lyndon B. Johnson, and which has started to be built upon James Earl Ray. Dr. King was assassinated about a year after the Riverside speech, during which time, in my eyes, all the planning has been done on how to assassinate Dr. King and build a believable history on Earl Ray that supports his guilt in murdering Dr. King. Earl Ray, who escaped 19 days after Dr. King's Riverside speech, tells how quickly the FBI found a scapegoat for Dr. King's murder in their own prisons. The time corresponding to this in the murders of Holst and Palo corresponds to the time interval from the murders of Holst and Palo to Christensen's arrival in Finland, which is 37 days, i.e. almost 11 months smaller time window than between Dr. King was murdered. However, this does not represent the absolute truth, because the murder of Holst and Palo could have been planned long before Christensen even arrived in Finland, which would mean that this murder plan was ready when Christensen arrived in Finland, and this time window of 37 days has been the time during which Christensen will be reviewed details of how to act during the murders of Holst and Palo when the train starts to run. In my opinion, this is supported by the fact that the execution of such murders and the time spent planning them should definitely be longer in order for it to be successful. This short period of time could be justified by the fact that the group that plans these murders is experienced and competent, which in the case of Tetan K2 police murders were Finnish police violent crime unit, led by Juha Rautaimo, is definitely not competent. If you look at what kind of mess up it has caused on the side of the Finnish police with its own criminal investigations that are way out of standards, what kind of lies it spreads about the course of events and how the police transport Christensen in civilian cars like a diplomat without any real and credible cover-ups, which is far away below standards, which means that this Christensen is a state professional criminal on whose neck the murder sentences carried out by these state authorities can be dumped, for monetary compensation and luxury life inside the prison, of course. But I don't directly complain about this stumbling of the Finnish police, because it has brought me a career as a crime reporter whose name will go down in history as the person who solved the murder of Martin Luther King Jr. with the help of the low-level actions of the Finnish police, which was revealed with the help of Giuliano's snooping. The execution of the murders of Eero Holst and Antero Palo begins when Steen Christensen arrives in Finland on the 15th of September on a Swedish ship, 37 days before the murders. Christensen, who has no reason to be in Finland, and there is no credible story that does not at least come from Christensen's mouth, and which the Finnish police certainly do not want to find out because it would only lead to crimes committed by them and other authorities. This time, 37 days, has apparently been the time during which Christensen has been going over his future role and what needs to be said in court, etc. If this poor performance of Juha Rautaimo and the Finnish police is mirrored in this time window, which is a reference to the Martin Luther King Jr., this time window of 37 days in red color, could very well be true based on it is being so poorly executed and covered up. There is a big question mark at which point a decision has been made about the murders of Holst and Palo, but my own assessment is that somewhere around summer, which is a fairly long time to start planning such a murder, which must be carried out in front of the people's eyes and via television. There is a big question mark whether Christensen was at all in Helsinki between Tuesday and Wednesday, because he is a Danish scapegoat who doesn't even know the Helsinki area, which causes a great danger to this operation to be revealed. If we look at how the world has acted in similar situations, such as in the case of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr., the paid scapegoats of both have not been at these crime scenes within an hour, but they have included murderers who remained hidden in the context of the cases, and these scapegoats have been far from these places. And because Christensen's the previous crimes and the eyewitness accounts of Hämeenlinna reveal it, Christensen is not really a murderer but a scapegoat on a payroll of the police and a professional criminal with which the police justify their own budgets in a country that has really educated crime far from here, and which has been too tempting a situation for the police to step on the wrong side of the law, where they can hand out death sentences around their own illegal activities to which people are lured with big money. If Christensen has been involved in the field in any way, it has been at most in connection with the robbery of the Hotel Palace, where he was immediately transferred to a car and suddenly left the field, which means that these people caught on camera were the Finnish police violent crime unit's members led by Juha Rautaimo, and outside of the official working hours, which it's quite normal for the Finnish police to have a double life, which means crimes outside of working hours and their investigation during office hours, which has raised the reputation of this criminal organization of Jurianio and Juha Rautaimo to the crest of a wave, thanks to the crimes solved, which have, however, been crimes produced by this organization outside of office hours. Beginning of the executions. 2. Men in positions. In my criminal investigations, the start of this assassination operation begins with all the people involved in this being in their positions, which means people at the observation points if bystanders are coming into this situation, which is of course very unlikely when the killing happened on the night between Tuesday and Wednesday sometime at 2:42. The people in green are watching the background so that no outsiders get into the situation, and the ones in red are the gunmen who took part in the assassination of Holsti and Palo, whose task is to disarm and execute them on the street, and the person in blue is an eyewitness observation of a man with clothes similar to the one found from Christensen's apartment, Pieter in K211, and ready to walk across the road when the shots are fired. Approaching the crime scene. 3. Holsti and Palo were apparently returning from the Kaivopuisto area towards the Little Roberting K2 police station because their shift was just ending. When Holsti's patrol has crossed the intersection of Virgin Path and Teton K2, no one can stop this operation other than a bystander who wandered into the scene, and it would be interesting to know if this assassination was attempted earlier on Sunday or Monday, when the operation had to be stopped. This kind of suspension of executions is supported by the fact that from this surveillance camera picture where Christensen is walking towards the crime scene, i.e. Teton K2 at 1:38, i.e. an hour too early, and MTV3 News is spreading the same picture with the time on it 2:35, which clearly means that MTV3's journalists have not checked the facts. This clearly indicates that these executions have apparently been attempted twice, where in the round made at 2:37 the stars have aligned on the side of the executioners and bad luck on the side of Palo and Holsti, which has meant a crime scene without bystanders, which has meant a green light for these executions. These times clearly indicate that Holsti's patrol tour has lasted an hour, during which they have always been in the vicinity of the Teton K2 crime scene around 2:40 am. These surveillance camera images clearly suggest that the robbery of the Hotel Palace is 99% staged and a pre-arranged operation inside the hotel, with the help of which the real perpetrators of the murders of Holst and Palo are covered up and the reasons are put on Christensen's shoulders, which he confesses, apparently for a large sum of money and luxury life inside of the prison, just like the scapegoat of Martin Luther King Jr., James Earl Ray did. The surveillance camera image 137 clearly refers to a process-like activity, where a person with the same clothes as Christensen had, goes around the yellow and cyan-colored route, which I will talk about later in this video under escape routes. On this route, fake Christensen leaves pictures of himself on surveillance cameras in case the executions of Holst and Palo take place. Based on these images, on the second occasion, i.e. 2:42 the exact time. Tuesday at 2:42, which must have been a quiet night even in Helsinki, when Holsti's patrol drove to an ambush organized by the Finnish police, where there was not the young and pleasant Steen Christensen from the poker tables of casinos, but 6 persons from the police or the army with special training ready to execute Holsti and Palo. Execution. When Holsti's patrol approaches the bike path, in my criminal investigations, no robbery has yet occurred in this area, so Holsti and Palo have been completely surprised in this situation, where there is a high probability that there were at least 6 gunmen. When Holst's patrol approaches the crosswalk, traffic is caused by gunmen and others who have been involved in the executions of these policemen, and one car is driven into the intersection as if it were crossing the intersection. I have put 6 gunmen in this situation, but more people could have participated in this, precisely at this crosswalk stage, which is meant to congest the intersection, which means that Holst's patrol has to stop. These persons acting as pedestrians, who do not participate in the arrest, have only had to walk in this intersection area and continue walking away from the situation and leave the gunman to finish the operation. Now that Holst's patrol has been stopped with the help of pedestrians and 1 car at the intersection, after which 2 gunmen on both sides of the car, a total of 4, approach from behind the car and together after opening the doors, all the gunmen, including those on the crosswalk, point at Holst and Palo and 1 person from both sides takes their weapons away. These gunmen on the crosswalk could very well have had an MP5 similar to a serial firearm, which is the best option to create such a large weapon superiority that Holst and Palo don't feel like starting a resistance. When Holsti and Palo have been disarmed, they are brought to the side of the car unarmed and knee position. While the pistol man stays, other gunmen runs away from the situation, and when they are far enough away that they will not cause eyewitness observations, this one pistol man who has been wearing clothes similar found on Pieta in K211 will execute Holsti and Palo on Teton K2 Street. With this kind of man and weapon superiority, it is possible to render these 2 policemen harmless so that they do not dare to open fire. A situation that corresponds to an army-style ambush with maximum weapon superiority. Because the executions of Holst and Palo have most likely been handled with such professional execution and executed on the street quickly and everyone ran away, and no prison authorities can be involved in such an operation, like perhaps in the murder of Kari Estika, from which these prison men come out victorious when there are even 2 of them. The murder of Kari Estika, which took place in her own apartment, is something completely different from the execution of 2 armed policemen on a Helsinki street. Because of this, Steen Christensen may not have been involved in any of these situations that happened on the field, but he has focused on his own performance as a scapegoat at the end of Hämeenlinna. The patrol of these 2 police officers has not been disarmed by a pleasant young man from the poker tables of the casinos who hasn't killed anyone so far in his previous bank robberies in Denmark, and which caused a maximum flood of positivity from all the Finns who met Christensen in Hämeenlinna. Christensen, who has not even been to this crime scene because there is so little unclear evidence, which is an army-style ambush situation, in contrast to Solvala Janin, who murdered Joksovic on the racetrack and is supported by clear video camera images, in contrast to the fuzzy images presented by the Finnish police of a person, from whom you can't even recognize yourself. Christensen's role on these screens and evidence has only been to appear as an alleged murderer and take the blame for these executions without no real evidence. Executions of Holsti and Palo which have been done in cooperation with the Finnish authorities, such as the Finnish police and the murder team that executed Holst and Palo, whose traces and criminal investigations have been messed up by the Finnish police officer Juha Rautaimo. There is much more evidence for the executions of Holst and Palo by the police than for the fact that this would have been done by the young, smart and pleasant Christensen, whose numerous bank robberies have not resulted in any deaths. So how could this person, without any special training other than from the poker tables of the casinos, could have required skills to carry out such a disarming of two police officers, which certainly would lead to a fight? I know one person who can do this, and that is John Rambo, and he was not in Finland at the time. Eyewitness observation. At the time of the executions, there is one eyewitness observation of the case, who had heard the car come to this intersection where it had been idling, after which he had heard the shots, and after that the car had quietly started to drive away. This woman who heard the car idling into her apartment doesn't mention anything about Christensen's conversation or the order he gave, with which he had disarmed Holst and Palo and ordered them to kneel on the ground. That might be just a one story of nonsense from a Finnish blue team of stupids and its private detectives, Juha Rautaimo and Esko Peltola, whose work and mess-ups I have to do, on top of that, without a salary for these dirty cops of Finland, which is probably the guarantee of the salary payment of all these dirty cops, i.e. framing murders wanted by the decision makers as a justification for your own salary payment that is targeted to the police officers who did not approve Giuliano's drug trade at the time, which was run from the police headquarters and which can certainly be murdered to prevent its exposure. The eyewitness observation supports that in the situation there was a car that left from the crime scene that I have presented in the description of the crime scene, and which certainly caused disturbance to Holst's patrol so that they could be surprised from behind. However, the hearing of this eyewitness can be interpreted in another way, which is less likely, namely, he could have heard someone turn off Holst's patrol car, and Christensen, who has robbed the Hotel Palace and shot two policemen, has no sense whatsoever to go to turn off the patrol car. His number one thing is to run as fast he can away from this crime scene, and quickly. But I don't think that anyone would have any interest in turning off this patrol car that only produces disturbing noise at the crime scene is only good, and therefore this option is less likely. There are 3 eyewitness accounts of the executions of Holst and Palo, who only heard the shots, and the closest of these eyewitnesses was Kari Nissinen, who, however, only woke up to the shootings, and not so much to Christensen's order, even though his window had been open and the distance to the crime scene was only 20 meters, orange distance line that can be seen in the picture to locate this apartment of Nissinen. Such a loud command would certainly have woken up more than one person to the window to see what the situation was going on outside, just like the shots, but none of these 3 interviewees say anything like this, which is apparently just one story of nonsense from this Finnish blue team of stupids and its private detectives, Juha Rautaimo and Esko Peltola, whose work and mess-ups I have to do without salary when they have tried to cover up these executions of Holsti and Palo with their personal professionalism that is mainly ridiculous. Robbery of Hotel Palace. If we look at how these things have been done in the world, such as the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and John F. Kennedy, these scapegoats have been far from these crime scenes and performing their own roles as scapegoats, and what it has been in each case. Based on this, Christensen has not been involved in any field activities regarding this robbery. The most logical starting point for this hotel place robbery and its initiation is the executions of Holst's patrol, the timing of which is completely dependent on when Holst's patrol drives to the Teton K2 ambush and they can be murdered without eyewitnesses. This operation may not have been successful on the first attempt, so the robbery alarm must be made only after the executions of Holst and Palo. When Holsti and Palo have been murdered, apparently at 2:42 a.m., a robbery alarm has been given from this hotel palace. Hotel Palace. The assassination of John F. Kennedy, the main stage of which was the state-owned Texas School Book Depository and all its executives. Hotel Palace, whose relations and connection with the state leadership is undeniable when you look at the kind of people who have been there, such as Margaret Thatcher, Henry Kissinger, Boris Yeltsin, François Mitterrand and Princess Margaret of Denmark. This hotel palace and its entire staff are certainly loyal to the Finnish state and its decision-makers, as if they could do the same as Eero Holsti and Torno Palo when their conflicts may have been caused by such situations as mistreatment of problem citizens and staging and dragging them into crimes, as what happened to Joseph Hannu and Niitamintu Turkkanen when Finnish police dragged them into school massacre planning of the University of Helsinki. In this case, of course, there are contradictions on the part of the perpetrators as well, but the actions of the Finnish police behind the facades and which do not cause a news threshold, certainly contain egregious cases based on these evidences and how much the drug lord of the Finnish police Jari Aunio and his team has buried the problematic citizens into graves prematurely, framed to state-closed institutions like in jail and mental ward as a basis for the payment of salaries of other authorities. In my eyes, Holst and Palo have had something like John F. Kennedy, who also had to be murdered away from the Vietnam War and other illegal activities that were the backbone of Lyndon B. Johnson. This hotel palace has played almost as big a role in the murders of Holst and Palo as the Texas School Book Depository played in the JFK assassination. Hotel Palace, with the help of the robbery, an attempt has been made to cover up the true motives of the murders of Holst and Palo and who actually murdered them. If you looked at how the Sokos Hotel Varkuna staff was silent about the interviews and did not give any of them, because they could have revealed the truth about this operation done by the Finnish police, the purpose of which was only to cover up the murders of Holsti and Palo in front of the illegal actions of the Finnish police and the state, which at that time included Jari Aunio's drug trade led from the headquarters of the Finnish police, which purpose was nothing else than to drag problematic citizens of Finland to the grave prematurely or in the state-closed institutions like jail and mental wards. Steen Christensen, who on top of that was transported in civilian cars without handcuffs like a diplomat and taking into account how secretly his transport to Denmark was carried out on a regular scheduled flight, says that he has not been in Finnish prisons for more than a week, which only includes the time spent for press interviews. Palace Doorman Mikko Tartinen. Unlike Sokos Varkuna's staff, Mikko Tartinen has given an interview about this palace robbery, not at the time but 27 years later, which we will listen to next.
Miten muistat sen yön?
No, hän oli tehnyt aikaisemmin päivällä huonevarauksen puhelimitse hotelliin ja olin silloin yövuorossa ja odottelin häntä saapuvaksi ja niin kuin hän tekinkin sitten aika myöhäänkin ja kävin avaamassa hänelle oven ja päästiin hänet sisälle, jonka jälkeen hän siirryi hänen perässään. Hän jäi sitten luonnollisesti siihen tiskin eteen ja minä menin tiskin taakse. Ja kun olin päässyt siihen tiskin taakse, niin hän osoitti minua aseella ja ilmoitti ryöstävänsä hotelliin.
Mitä ajattelit tuossa hetkessä ja pystytkö toimimaan siinä jollain tavalla?
Pystyn omasta mielestä toimimaan rauhallisesti ja olimme myös saaneet koulutuksen aiheeseen joitakin vuosia aikaisemmin. Tiesin mitä pitää tehdä, että pitää suostua ryöstäjän vaatimuksia ja antaa hänelle kaikki rahat, mitä kassasta löytyy.
Mutta hän siis osoitti sinua aseella aivan lähietäisyydeltä.
Kyllä, ja myös tunnistin, että ase on oikea 9 mm pistooli, että on sen verran kokemusta aseesta, että tiesin, että nyt on tosi kyseessä.
Mitä hän sanoi sinulle tuossa hetkessä?
Hän puhui englantia ja ilmoitti, että tämä on ryöstö ja hän haluaa kaikki rahat.
Ja sinä toimit niin, aukaisit kassan, hän otti rahat sieltä?
Minä aukasin hänelle kassan ja hän itse omatoimisesti kahmi sieltä kaikki setelit mukaansa. No sen jälkeen hän komensi minut lattialle makaamaan siinä vastaanoton tiskin taakse mahalleen. Hän sitoi minulta jalat ja kädet.
This story created by the Finnish police is full of contradictions and the most incredible refusals of interviews. Christensen's mysterious arrests on dark park paths to Christensen's police transportation in civilian cars without handcuffs. But let's go through this fairy tale of Mikko Tartinen. Contradiction 1. Hood on head. Ilta-Sanomat has reported in connection with the robbery of the Hotel Palace on the 24th of October that Christensen put a hood on Tartinen's head. But Tartinen does not tell about it in an interview 26 years after the events. Putting the hood on would certainly be a memorable experience if it had happened for real. Tartinen would have told about it in an interview. This only proves that more drama has perhaps been added to these news stories, that the case will surely sink into the public eye and that everyone believes that Christensen robbed the Hotel Palace and shot the policemen Holsti and Palo, but these are lies and the question is how many lies these police killings contain and if I am asked, a much. Contradiction 2. Handling money. Tartinen said that Christensen, who had robbed 9 banks in Denmark, first took the money and then tied him up with pieces of cloth. This method of operation is very common for these victims of the Finnish police, i.e. problem citizens who come without any skills, maybe even drugged, to steal cash registers. Their thoughts are 99% on money loot, which is why they pounce on the money as soon as they see it. This model brings with it the risk that the officer will take the gun away from this unprofessional robber when the object of his interest, i.e. money, is right in front of his nose. Christensen would never have made such a rookie mistake, that he would start stuffing money into his pocket when the clerk was next to him. Contradiction 3. Binding. If this was the right situation and Christensen's doing, he would have ordered the clerk to the ground immediately after opening the cash register and tied him up immediately, and he would not have used pieces of the sheet as taught in the children's cartoons. But he would have bought cable ties that cost €3 for this gig. During such robberies, there is no time to tie up any porters with some pieces of cloth. In this situation, it would have been the same to go outside with the porter at the same time and, threatening him with a gun, order him to go in the other direction so that he could not trigger the alarm from the inside, which would have given Christensen more time. Hondeliga, who robbed 20 banks in Finland without getting caught because this group has been under the protection of the Finnish police, and how did this group get instructions on how to rob these banks, and this group did not bind their employees but always ordered them to the ground, which is the best solution in these situations.
Jonka jälkeen ilmoitti, että sanoi jonkun aikamäärän, mikä mun pitää siellä olla ja mitään ei saa tehdä. Ja toki kuulin, että hän poistui hotellista, ovi meni kiinni ja sain kädet vapaasti helpostikin. Jonka jälkeen painoin, meillä oli semmoinen hälytysnappi siinä vastaanottotiskin alla, painoin sitä ja irrotin myös jalat ja jonka jälkeen soitin hätänumeroon ja ilmoitin, että hotelli on ryöstetty.
Millä tavalla hän sitoi sinun kätesi ja jalkasi?
Hän oli mukanaan semmoista lakanasta revittyjä suikaleita ja niillä hän sitoi sitten kädet ja jalat.
Escape route. Christensen has been caught on video cameras on the escape route, from which the Finnish police, of course, present the most disturbing images of which one could not even recognize yourself. Camera 1 is located on the wall of the Ministry of Defense at the intersection of Fabianin K2 and Southern Marketing K2, where the first picture of the supposed Christensen was taken when he was going to rob the Hotel Palace, which he nevertheless did not done. I think the first picture of camera 1 was taken when the supposed Christensen was in front of the Hotel Fabian. The time when this picture was taken is unknown because the Finnish police would just have more to explain about their lousy assassination projects in front of my one-man's army, whose lineups are known for the abilities of Minna Passi. Supposed Christensen who has walked this route directly in front of the cameras, so better pictures of him could have been presented if the Finnish police did not have to fear that their fraud with the assassination would be revealed. Camera 2, which is located at Union in K218, has taken a picture at 2:33, where the supposed Christensen has some kind of backpack on his back, but which is not in the first picture taken in front of Hotel Fabian. By the way, both of these people are wearing the same colored clothes, so even if these are different people, they are clearly involved in this assassination project of Holsti and Palo because of wearing the same colored clothes at the same time than the assumed murderer was wearing when he wandered the night streets of Helsinki at this same time. I say this because the images taken from these cameras do not match the robbery of the Hotel Palace and the executions of Holst and Palo in the timeline that has been formed based on the information leaked to the media, which means with all the lies and ambiguities in this case that the murders of Holst and Palo have been staged so that the causes of the case and the sentence goes on the necks of a completely innocent person, that is, Steen Christensen, who in my eyes has nothing to do with this murder, and he could be released from prison on my behalf and given compensation for the time he spent there. This proves even more that there have been different people in these cameras wearing the same clothes who were most obviously members of the Finnish police's violent crime unit, led by the bulldozer of crime scenes, Juha Rautaimo, whose team is responsible for staging these murders of Holsti and Palo and messing up the crime scenes. After this, the supposed Christensen has been caught on camera for the third time when he walks towards the crime scene at the Teton K2 at 2:38. Based on the lighting in the photo, Christensen is assumed to be near the street lamp at Fabianin K21, which is apparently the reason for the bright lighting in the photo. In this photo, the backpack that Christensen is supposed to have been carrying in the photo of camera 2 on Union K218 is not visible, which is extremely strange to me. Fake Christensen 1, cameraman. This interval from 2:33 to 2:38 fits the movements of fake Christensen in the surveillance camera images to the yellow, cyan-colored walking route, according to Google Maps. But who robbed the Hotel Palace? Because based on these video camera images, this fake Christensen who appears in the surveillance camera images could not have robbed the Hotel Palace so that it would fit the times in the surveillance camera images. If you look at this timeline that I have collected for the media from the course of events reported by the police, which includes these video surveillance images, this fake Christensen who was caught in the surveillance camera 2 image at 2:33, could not possibly have robbed Hotel Palace and made it back to the camera 1 image at 2:38. At 2:38 of this time, you can reach the crime scene at 2:50, which is the police's own estimate of the murder time of Holst and Palo, because this journey from camera 1 to the crime scene takes about 10 minutes, but this fake Christensen would have missed the Palace Hotel robbery. In order to succeed in all these three situations, i.e. surveillance camera footage, the Palace Hotel robbery and the executions of Holst and Palo, there must be three fake Christensens, one for each situation, and only then you can fit these events on the timeline. The role of this fake Christensen number 1, which we have seen on the cameras, is only to go around the cameras of this area at some point this operation and leave, although there has not been one person here either, because in the pictures of camera 2, the fake Christensen was carrying a backpack on his back, but in the pictures of camera 1, he no longer have it. Fake Christensen 2, Palace robbery. Fake Christensen 2 has been involved in the robbery of Hotel Palace, although this was not a real robbery but a pre-arranged beginning where the role of this fake Christensen was to be a radio man inside of the Hotel Palace, and he gives the signal and information that this alarm is made from Hotel Palace when Holsti and Palo has been executed on Tetan K2. Video surveillance disabled. There is a surveillance camera at the traffic lights in front of Hotel Palace that has been switched off, which shows how much preparation has been done for the murders of Holst and Palo. It could be difficult to justify this claim as a single act in connection with these murders, but the assassination of Holst and Palo contains so many ambiguities, such as ambiguities regarding how Christensen can escape twice from massive police blockades, first in Helsinki's Ullanlinna and next past the isolation of the Sokos Hotel Varkuna. Ambiguities in surveillance camera images where Christensen sometimes appears with a backpack and sometimes without. Ambiguities in positioning in the timeline of surveillance cameras, which means for Christensen that he has been in 2 different places at the same time. Contradictory eyewitness statements about Christensen's state of mind in Hämeenlinna, which do not support that Christensen planned suicide, which was apparently only the Finnish police's own story. Conflicting eyewitness statements about Christensen's behavior that would indicate that he was the murderer of Holst and Palo. Ambiguities about Christensen's arrest, which has no eyewitnesses on a dark jogging path in Hämeenlinna, which was carried out after sunset. The murderer of 2 policemen was driven away in civilian cars like a diplomat without handcuffs, and on these grounds he has not been in Finnish prisons except when he had to give interviews to the media together with pictures. Mysterious scheduled flight back to Denmark on a scheduled plane as if he was just on vacation in Finland. There is a big question mark where Christensen has been when he was supposed to be in Finnish prisons, but it is certain that he has not been in any stone house. All the ambiguities of the case together only emphasize each other, and that they are the result of the systematic operation of the Finnish police violent crime unit, led by Juha Rautaimo and his team, and the executions of Holst and Palo is the end result of this systematic operation, and where the surveillance camera maintenance measures in connection with the murder of Holsti and Palo are only one measure among others to covering up the crime scenes of this murder. But why did this camera that was in front of Hotel Palace have to be put under maintenance and out of use? If you look at these video surveillance cameras, the only one that is in private use is camera number 2, whose tapes civilians do not even watch because this union in K218 has not been robbed, so these tapes are watched only by the police violent crime unit that is messing up this crime scene. Camera 1 is on the wall of the Ministry of Defense, where these executioners of Holst and Palo could very well have come from, so the only one who is watching these videos are people who obey the state's interest, people who for sure won't fulfill the graves with the Finnish citizens who are not satisfied with the illegal actions of the state authorities, such as the drug trade of the Finnish police, which is run from their own headquarters, or Seppo Selänpää's bank robberies with the help of the Honda League, whose loot money was laundered into their own pockets with the help of Giuliano's drug trade. Camera 4 is located inside the Meritar Bank that was located in the vicinity of the crime scene at year 1997, right at the intersection, which at that time had effective video surveillance system, but the bank did not comment in any way on the inquiries of the Ilta-Sanomat, which is of course expected from a state bank, the highest state authorities who are clearly behind the murders of Holst and Palo. If you look at the kind of place where the Meritar Bank was located, the murders of Holst and Palo have certainly been caught on its surveillance camera and which are at the secret vaults of the Finnish Security Intelligence Police, just like the Lee Harvey Oswald's receipt for his stay at Hotel Marski in 1959. The only video recordings that could have spread to be seen by a large number of people were the pictures from the camera at the intersection of Hotel Palace, which could have ended up being seen by anyone, so it had to be taken out of use due to some non-existent maintenance work. Was Hotel Palace robbed? In other words, the credibility of this Hotel Palace robbery is completely dependent on the criminal investigations of the Finnish police, who, according to the authorities, at that time, i.e. in 1997, ran Europe's largest drug trade from its own headquarters and whose disclosure to Holst could have been the trigger behind these murders behind the facades. Of course, Mikko Tartinen's statement is for this robbery of Hotel Palace, but it is a hotel that has a maximum connection with the government, so the staff of this hotel has been able to go through a very detailed investigation by the Finnish Security Intelligence Service, one of the leaders of which, Juha Turunen, is a member of the Finnish Police Violent Crime Unit whose crimes and murders I just investigate. Hotel Palace, whose employees certainly have patriotism towards state borders and decision makers, even if it is the execution of honest policemen on Teton K2. Regarding the robbery of the Hotel Palace, there is no solid evidence that Christensen was even in this area or the hotel because of all these three fake Christensens who have played their own role in the field in these executions of Holsti and Palo, although this robbery of the palace fits Christensen's earlier role as a bank robber and where he could be involved, but whose movements do not match the surveillance camera images, which means that there have been at least 3 persons on the field who carries similar clothes that alleged Christensen. This leaves it unclear which of these people would be the real Christensen or is he anyone. If the real Christensen was on the field, his role would definitely be this robbery of Hotel Palace, after which he was immediately taken off the field to Hämeenlinna by car. If the executions of Holst and Palo were, as it has been told through the media, bad luck and accident done in panic, Christensen, who would have robbed the Hotel Palace, would have been caught on camera 1 in the 246 minimum and at the crime scene for 256 if he had tied up Mikko Tartinen in the Hotel Palace and a maximum of 250 in camera 1 and 3 to the crime scene if Christensen had tied up Mikko Tartinen and he would not have made it to the Teton K2 crime scene at the right time. Someone could say that these times are indicative and not exact, but the surveillance camera images are accurate. Alarm time caused is accurate, and if you can trust anything in what the Finnish police is saying, it's that they came to the crime scene in the time that was announced to the media, 2:53, because there is no reason or motive for Finnish police to lie in this matter, and these times that I have shown are in somehow very accurate and they do not fit in any way with the robbery of Hotel Palace. Only possible route that fits with the murder of Holsti and Palo is the yellow, cyan route, which does not include the robbery of the Hotel Palace. This means that there were more than one fake Christensen at the night who wears similar clothes. Fake Christensen too has been involved in the robbery of Hotel Palace, although this was not a real robbery but a pre-arranged beginning where the role of this fake Christensen was to be a radio man inside the Hotel Palace, and he gives the signal and information to Mikko Tartinen that he launched the alarm from Hotel Palace when Holsti and Palo has been successfully executed on Teton K2. If you look at Mikko Tartinen's interview that I showed earlier, If this fake robbery had not been done, which was nevertheless a pre-arranged measure, it would be difficult for Tartinen to stick to his story if he had to rely only on his own imagination regarding this robbery, if it wasn't actually and physically done. But this robbery was just part of the assassination project of Holst and Palo, which he nevertheless failed, not because of the unconvincing story written by the Violent Crime Unit, led by Juha Rautaimo, but because of he forgot to mention the hood that alleged Christensen put on his head based on the Ilta-Sanomat news article. Execution of Holsti and Palo, where everyone has given their own contribution to the success of this operation, just like in connection with the murder of Tuomas Trisvuori, who was lured to Uganda, controlled by Mama Africa, aka Jutta Urpilainen, with the help of the arms manufacturer Patria's misleading mandate, together with Suvi Linden, ex-minister of the coalition, who lied everything but his own name in connection of this trip to Uganda and why she is the main culprit of Trisvuori's murder, and with whose help the other participants in the murder of Trisvuori would be caught and be held accountable for their actions. This Hotel Palace robbery only serves as an excuse for Christensen to shoot Holsti and Palo by accident, which is really an alibi for the highest state decision-makers who have received the signal to execute Holsti and Palo, because they apparently did not agree with Finland's illegal actions, which the Finnish police Golden Mercedes-Benz Chirianio is practiced behind the scenes of the police, which definitely includes Seppo Selänpää's bank robberies with the help of Honda League. The executions of Holst and Palo, which are supposed to be the result of the Palace robbery, are a complete lie based on the Finnish police's criminal investigations, and the background of these executions is a massive cooperation of the authorities, for which Christensen has come to Finland to play his own role as a scapegoat who takes the blame for these executions on Tetan K2, because the Finnish authorities simply cannot take these murders in their own shoulders, because it would only reveal the true face of democracy, which purpose is to cover up the dictatorial positions of the state leadership, from which even such a large assassination project as the murders of Holst and Palo could be launched. Fake Christensen 3, Executioner. We already went through the executions of Holst and Palo in Tetan K2, where the task of the third fake Christensen is to give an eyewitness account. This third fake Christensen could very well have been the person who also executed Holst and Palo, because he is the last person to leave the crime scene after the shootings. This is because if the shots cause eyewitness observations, there must not be a gang of 6 to 8 people at the crime scene, which is why all the other people involved in these murders have left before the shots, and the last one, fake Christensen 3, remains to carry out the executions and leaves alone after them. In the model of one Christensen, the only one who would have made it to the crime scene before the arrival of the first police patrol at 2:53 is fake Christensen, who did not carry out the robbery of the Hotel Palace because all the other options included the robbery of the Hotel Palace. Christensen would not have arrived at the crime scene within the time window of these murders. There is only one solution to this case, and that is fake. Contradictions. I have found 14 contradictions in Tetan K2 police murders that support the fact that the Finnish authorities, especially members of the Finnish Police Violent Crime Unit, murdered Holsti and Palo on Tetan K2, where the main responsibility has been the Finnish Police Violent Crime Unit, who messed up the crime scenes so that they themselves can blame Christensen for their own crimes, in this case Holsti and Palo's executions, and only 3 credible claims that support the actions of the police. First, I will go through the actions that support the lies of the police, which is of course really wrong towards all the people murdered by the Finnish police, such as towards Holsti and Palo, i.e. to support and defend the police's criminal and false activities. But I trust on this for incompetence of the Finnish police, which is mainly ridiculous and why I have no fear to give points on the side of them when they have played such a long time on the wrong side of the law. 1. Massive police search in Helsinki. The police's massive search for a murderer is certainly true, and this is how it would be done if someone killed a police officer, and it wouldn't even have to be a police officer, just an ordinary person would be enough. 2. Christensen accidentally bumps into Holsti's patrol on Tetan K2. The fact that Christensen ran into Holsti's patrol on Tetan K2 could very well be true if it were a real case and an alarm had been raised about the robbery of the Hotel Palace. 3. Christensen got panic and shot Holsti and Palo. Esko Peltola said that he does not believe that Christensen's first shot was not an accident, but that it was shot because of the difficult situation, from which Christensen wanted to leave quickly, and as a result, he decided to shoot the policeman, as a result of which he was able to continue his journey. This kind of situation is quite realistic and people make bad choices in panic and cornered. 4. Christensen have no real reason or motive to come cold Finland. Danish Christensen, who came from a prison holiday to Finland without no real reason, where he came without no money, where he has no friends, other than the corrupt Finnish police officers, including Juha Rautaimo, with whom he has cooperated so that Christensen can be blamed for the murders of Holsti and Palo, where Christensen's role is to confess everything about the Finnish police's violent crime unit decide to blame him, and which Christensen did, apparently a large sum of money, and with which he has earned a luxurious life inside Danish prisons, which may well mean that he can move very freely even outside the walls. 5 and 6. Ambiguities in surveillance camera images. Christensen's movements with the times in the surveillance camera images do not match with the robbery of the Hotel Palace and the executions on Tetan K2, which means at this point that in order to succeed in these three, with those in the surveillance camera images, the robbery of the Hotel Palace and the executions on Tetan K2, there must be 3 fake Christensens here. In the surveillance camera image 2, Christensen is carrying some kind of backpack on his back, which, however, is not in any of the other surveillance camera images, which means that Christensen received the backpack after the first photo was taken, but abandoned this backpack by the surveillance camera image 3. In addition, these surveillance camera images are so blurry that you can't even recognize yourself from them, which only supports the fact that the person appearing in these images could be anyone. 7. Surveillance camera turned off with an excuse. The camera that was in front of the Hotel Palace was turned off some insignificant maintenance procedure because this camera could reveal that the palace robbery was a complete lie and that Christensen may not even have been involved in this robbery and why it has been taken out of service. The only surveillance camera that filmed the traffic and which is connected to city surveillance that supervised the city of Helsinki and whose behind there was for sure honest Finnish citizens who are not involved in the Tetan K2 murders, and they would have seen this fake robbery where everyone had to believe the lies of Mikko Tartinen about this fake robbery of Hotel Palace. 8. Palace portier Tartinen forget to mention the hood that Christensen put his head. Palace porter Mikko Tartinen did not remember to tell anything about the hood that Christensen had put on his head in an interview he gave to MTV3 News 26 years later, which Ilta Sanomat reported on in 1997. If anything, this is an experience that cannot be forgotten. 9. Hotel Varkuna manager Pillinen cooperate with police during this operation. Sokos Hotel Varkuna's manager Mikko Pillinen's placement at the hotel's reception desk, which as a work area does not even belong to the manager, reveals that he has somehow been involved in this operation, that he does not speak to the media, that the person who signed in was really Kim Anderson and not Steen Christensen on fake ID card, and why Soko's hotel staff did not agree to the interviews is because this information has come from a high place so that this operation will not be revealed. That the Finnish authorities themselves have been behind the murders of the police officers and executed them. This activity is completely correlated with the activities of Hotel Palace's Mikko Tartinen and how the employees of these hotels, such as Mikko Tartinen and Mikko Pillinen, have been involved in the murders of Holsti and Palo with a very small role, where they have been required to give false statements that support the Finnish police's false description of the events. 10. Christensen trip from Helsinki to Hämeenlinna timeline fits only to car transport. Christensen's journey from Pietarin K2 to the Helsinki railway station and from there to the train going to Hämeenlinna does not match the time window when it comes to a Danish tourist lost in Helsinki at a time when there was no smartphone and internet in the back pocket and who was also being chased in Finland with the help of helicopters. This ideal time window in which Christensen got to the Helsinki railway station on Pietarin K2 and from there to the train going to Hämeenlinna is possible for a person who during that time used the train for work trips for example and for whom everything is a routine activity, which means that he at least knew the Helsinki area and the train timetables. But Christensen as a foreigner is not capable of such a performance in cold Finland where he is alone, has no friends and in the middle of a manhunt, and as Christensen says it himself, he is a person who, since 1985, has turned left when he should have turned right and when he should have turned right, he turned left and Christensen would have turned in the wrong direction many times in the center of Helsinki on his way to the train station and missed all the intermediate steps that would have helped him reach this ideal arrival time at Hotel Varkuna. This means that Christensen has moved with car from Helsinki to Hämeenlinna, but if I had to guess what is the truth is that Christensen was not even in Helsinki at the night between Tuesday and Wednesday, when Holsti and Palo was executed but there was only the Finnish police violent crime unit and its members with Jari Aunio and all the dirty cops of the Finnish police. 11. Conflicting eyewitness accounts, dangerous and unpredictable. The police claimed in the press conferences that Christensen is a dangerous and unpredictable criminal, which is in complete contradiction to the people who were in contact with Christensen in Hämeenlinna, who could not in any way connect Christensen to the murderer, at least because of his friendly nature, which only speaks to the fact that Christensen has not shot anyone. But the shooters can be found either from the Finnish police or the army, based on the style how they were executed on the street like all the innocent victims of Nazi Hitler. 12. Conflicting eyewitness accounts of state of mind and suicidal. The police claimed that Christensen was suicidal and attempted suicide 3 times, although Christensen himself has denied this. And all the eyewitness statements about him support Christensen's word, and that the Finnish police are lying about this case, with which they try to make the public believe that Christensen is behind the executions of Holsti and Palo because of this self-destruction that stems from his remorse that would have come from killing Holsti and Palo on Tetan K2, even though he hasn't shot anyone. 13. Hotline tips about Christensen even though no one else can connect him to the murderer. If no ordinary citizen knows how to connect Christensen to the murders of Holsti and Palo, then who could these people who called the hotline of the Finnish police's violent crime units be other than the police's own tipsters who already knew this bullshit of the Finnish blue team of stupids? Or best of all, Juha Rautaimo himself in the evening drunk that comes from the tension of Christensen's manhunt is causing inside his head. The way I see how the Finnish police use this hotline is that it collects eyewitness statements from the public regarding the crime it has organized and planned, in this case the murders of Holsti and Palo, and builds its own story to rhyme with the eyewitness statements which it presents to the eyes of the people through the media, where the Finnish police and Rautaimo present their own superiority when they have caught their own paid scapegoat based on the tips that has most likely came from police-own investigators rather than the ordinary citizen who can't connect the smart and pleasant Christensen to the murderer. Can you believe this? Is it possible to get any lower than this in terms of professional expertise, which is mainly ridiculous and should be part of rehabilitative work training and which is the special expertise of the Finnish blue team of stupids? Although it is me who should be thankful the incompetence of the Finnish police who are this bad to read the written text that it has clearly avoided this bullshit of bureaucratic activity by not investing in its quality, which is the cornerstone and foundations of a democratic dictatorship and which was created in the United States, where the FBI has played a large role in its use and with which it has also covered up its own assassination project and which solution of comes from Finland, which has been helping the fact that the two major expertise of the Finnish police, the incompetence and stupidity has collided in a significant way that cannot be described in words and which has made my work as a crime reporter significantly easier. 14. Christensen tried suicide outside while police have cordons over hotel. Christensen, who had attempted suicide 3 times during the time he was staying at Sokos Hotel Varkuna, according to the police. These suicides could only have happened on Saturday, based on the eyewitness statements, that is, on the same day when the police, according to their own words, had already built up cordons around the Sokos Hotel Varkuna and put Christensen's hotel room under observation and surveillance, on the basis of which the police could even tell when Christensen was taking a shower, for example. All these massive COINTELPRO measures, Christensen was able to walk out of his room that were wiretaped by the police, walked through the police cordon and, under the influence of alcohol and drugs, settled in a boat on the shore to wait for death, which did not come to the boat, just like the Finnish police did not neither, which is quite strange because this distance between the cordon and shore is something like 4 meters. 15. Managed to escape massive police cordons, not twice but 4 times at Hotel Varkuna area. Christensen, who not only managed to escape twice from the police cordon during his escape, but 4 times if we count all the cases that were happened in the area of Sokos Hotel Varkuna. Bypassing the cordon in the center of Helsinki could still be understood because there are many other people on the move in the area in the morning, but that he still escaped through the cordon built around the Sokos Hotel in Hämeenlinna is 100% false, which only tells and what is supported by the eyewitness statements of Tuomo Kolhonen, who worked as a taxi driver, and how he didn't see any police cordons or barriers, which just proves how the Finnish police really lie about the reality of the case, that they themselves are not caught in the murders of Holsti and Palo, and that everyone accepts Christensen as the perpetrator of the murder. 16. Police face-to-face in elevator but decide to play drunk instead of arresting him. According to Alibi magazine, the police have received information that the police would have ambushed Christensen in the Sokos Hotel Varkuna, where this undercover police officer would have driven into the same elevator with Christensen, where he has seen it best to pretend to be a drunk than to put a stop to this wandering of supposed murderer of the police. Can you imagine? 17. Mysterious arrest after the sunset on quiet path, no eyewitnesses. Since the death did not come on the boat, neither does the Finnish police, where Christensen was under the influence of alcohol and drugs, with his wrists cut. He has practically walked through the police barricades again, and barricaded himself in his own room, from which he has decided to run away, of course, through police cordons once again, which is now, by the way, 4th time, and for sure some kind of world record for incompetence of the Finnish police, but this time there were some police officer who would not as deep sleep, noticed this and was quick and immediately ready to run after Christensen to a remote jogging path where he was arrested after the sunset, which of course has no eyewitnesses. 18. Transport in civilian cars without handcuffs. After the arrest, Christensen was transported like a diplomat in civilian cars without handcuffs, from which it has been leaked to the media that Christensen was bound up to his elbows, but I have not found any pictures on the internet where Christensen was handcuffed at any point, but he has also walked the corridors of the district court without any kind of binding, even though it should be the man who executed 2 policemen on Tetan K2. This video, where Christensen is brought to the Helsinki Police Department in a civilian car, is seen like in front of the club premises of an ordinary criminal league, where one's own calf, who will confess and take all the blame for your own shoulders for the murders planned and carried out by the Finnish police, is being driven like a Christmas ham to be grilled in the one's own courts. The Finnish police, which has clearly taken a strict line with all its members who would like to break away from the illegal operating models of this largest criminal organization in Europe, the Finnish police, in the face of which the Finnish police are buried even deeper in their criminal world, whose slogans written on the walls about the members resigning as rats are most certainly true, and how to silence them forever so that they don't sing about the illegal activities running behind the facades of the Finnish police, such as the drug trade run from its headquarters, or that Seppo Selenpää of the Finnish police was behind these bank robberies in the early 90s with his own Honda League, whose robbery money was laundered with the help of Gerania's drug trade. The criminal world that has absorbed the morals of the Finnish police and made it a list of demands for monetary compensation, which includes the elimination of problem citizens who are unprofitable to the state and the execution of the death sentences of the decision makers whose criminal investigations it is messing up according to the teachings of Juha Rautaimo, which are printed as textbooks of the police vocational college, with the help of which the new brats of the Finnish police are brainwashed into believing a lie about their own superiority, about one's own superiority and one's own justice, the word of which no living creature on earth or below can question is somehow so familiar from dictatorships, and which Finland as a state teaches all its citizens, namely to worship state agencies and their decisions like a medieval church around which even the sun revolves even today. 19. Mysterious and secret scheduled flight to Denmark. When Christensen's time came to move to Denmark, it was only told about his transport afterwards, which means that Christensen has not necessarily even come from a Finnish prison, but from somewhere summer house to the airport, where he traveled on a scheduled plane together with the Finnish police in civilian clothes like some agent of another country. If you look at all these problems that hang over Christensen, based on all of these contradictions regarding Christensen as a police killer, he hasn't shot anyone and he hasn't been in prisons more than when he had to give interviews to newspapers, and all the other time he's been somewhere secret from the public where there haven't been bars on the windows. All these actions proves how the Finnish police cooperates behind the scenes together with other authorities and decision makers when it hides its own crimes as crimes that are carried out at the wishes of the highest decision makers of the state and are carried out under their approval, and which the police and medical care carry out on a much larger scale among problem citizens who are unprofitable to the state when they carry out silent ethnic cleansing, whose victims in Finland have been Petri Salonen, a woman from Hirila, my childhood friend Jarno Lapotti, who died at the age of 27 in psychiatric clinics like many other disadvantaged people in modern Finland, and the list is long as you can see it. This list is all the cases in Finland and abroad which I have collected that are not normal deaths, but they all consist some kind of suspicious behind them. There were example the death of Princess Diana on my list in the beginning, but I have dropped it on my lists because I don't see that there are nothing on behind it, but for sure I will like to investigate it with rights of police. The criminal army made up of dirty cops of the Finnish police, which has clearly been allowed to play its own dirty game within the borders of Finland without a real competitor, which has been made possible by the Finnish one-party system, which has trained the Finnish police into the largest organized crime league in Europe, which has avoided all judgments by playing stupid at the right time, which has become the main function of the Finnish police and its backbone, as a result of which it can no longer distinguish right from wrong and call upon the credibility of the state agencies to come polish the fenders of the golden Mercedes-Benz of the Finnish police, Gerionio, which have been tarnished on the drug trade rallies of underworld when Gerionio transported drug barrels inside and outside of the official working hours of the Finnish police and executed its own clients from underworld. A criminal world that is in reality the insanity and madness of the White King of the Coalition and little bit Waco Sauli, the two-faced Niinisto, who has absorbed the morals of the Finnish police when this insanity is sold as patriotism towards state borders in a country that even includes Finnish women in its war machine to the same extent as Nazi Hitler included women in Germany, his own madness in the state's closed concentration camps. Just like the White King of the Coalition chooses the most mentally deranged Finnish citizens to lead and serve the blue color of the coalition, in the name of which the worst crimes against humanity are justified in the name of medicine, in the name of their own ideology, capitalism, i.e. financial margins, whose operating models are very similar to Nazi Hitler's National Socialism, because both of these, the capitalism of the coalition and Nazi Hitler's National Socialism, carry out crimes against humanity and the mass extermination of problem citizens that Nazi Hitler carried out in the name of racial doctrine, and the most insane president in Finnish history who ever lived, the crazy king of the coalition Sauli, the two-faced Niinisto, does it in the name of mental health problems, which his university, the University of Turku, publishes nothing but lies research based on deliberate misinterpretations of statistics. Sauli Niinisto's insanity, whose instigator is state borders, and from which a collective spirit is sought once again for the mass destruction of citizens in the name of the coalition's financial cover and the common good, which are put into practice in Finnish medical clinics with the help of medical professionals trained in the ideology of the coalition, to which the University of Turku researcher, Walter Major Helena, who uses these 21st century Jews, i.e. problematic citizens unprofitable to the Finnish state, as human rats in medicine and as fuel for your own academic career, with which to raise your own academic dignity among other professors at the University of Turku who are only interested in people as human rats in medicine. The White King of the Coalition and the most mentally deranged president in the history of Finland, Sauli the last Niinisto, who has turned Finnish medical clinics into clinics responsible for mass destruction, where systematic accidents are organized for problem citizens who are unprofitable to the state, in which they die and the people who are guilty of them will receive an acquittal in the courts owned by the White King of the Coalition, apparently based on a patriotic act. The Finnish police, who play their own role in this insanity, just like the Gestapo played theirs under Nazi Hitler, where the drug trade run from the Finnish police headquarters and Seppo Selänpää's bank robberies have apparently only been the path required for training towards enlightenment and the complete insanity of the White King of the Coalition, which has produced results for me if it lets count on the insanity side of the coalition, which gets the maximum number of medical human rats. For the use of Turku University researcher Walter Major Helena from the coalition's human rat farms, whose walls are full of these young Finnish people who have been sentenced with the help of a lawyer-like scam to be medical human rats without guilt to serve the madness of the coalition on the medical side. The Finnish police plays a big role in sending these problem citizens to the coalition's human rat farms for medical use, in connection with which it gives unmotivated criminal investigation statements on the side of these victims of official corruption, who are disadvantaged citizens provoked into actions, whose reaction is mainly self-defense in these situations. As a counterbalance to this unjust action, life has offered a new opportunity to the side of unprofitable citizens and human rats of medicine, just like it did with the Jews in 40s, when life has offered the spirit of one of the greatest women ever walked on this planet or any other where Elon Musk sent his rockets, Sophie Scholl and White Rose, to join my one man's army, in front of which the Finnish police have nothing to offer except its incompetence, which is mainly ridiculous, and its golden Mercedes-Benz of the Finnish police, a police officer of the year, Chirianio, who ran drug trade from the headquarter of the Finnish police, whose flower beds in the backyard contain more than caches of money, namely the carpet-wrapped former customers whose rotting corpses belongs to my criminal investigation list as a merits, like all the cases in the world that my one man's army has solved, like the murder of Martin Luther King Jr., who was not shot by James Earl Ray but Memphis police. Detective Edward read it from the bathroom window of Bessie Brewers. Final conclusion. Christensen's arrest must have gone down like a Christmas songs in church in 1997, when no one could imagine, even in their wildest nightmares, that the police and state decision-makers are behind these police murders, all the reasons of which go to the necks of Steen Christensen, a paid informer of the police. And how can the people believe everything that these state robbers like Chirianio says in the media? The Finnish police, which enjoys the maximum approval of the decision-makers, which lives in perfect symbiosis with the state's decision-makers, whose crimes it is sweeping under the carpet and thanks to which it can run a drug trade from its own headquarters, whose ultimate purpose is to cleanse the nation of unfavorable individuals and to rob banks with the help of the Honda League, whose money is laundered with the help of Chirianio's drug trade. Where did this league spend all their money? In the face of these actions, the executions of Kari Tarvanainen and Veli Gron seem mostly unjust. And why is the Finnish police allowed to run this criminal activity from their own headquarters? But another Finnish citizen would like to earn money to maintain his own life in this world of easy money run by the Finnish police. He will be executed, whose perpetrators can be found in the criminal organizations operating under the control of the Finnish police, who drink the forbidden fruit of the underworld from Chirianio's barrels in the belief that it gives them indescribable abilities to commit major crimes. Barrels that contains nothing but Chirianio's sweaty lies from his time in office, the sin that has been washed away in these barrels that is poured out to disadvantaged citizens who are trying to survive in the middle of the Finnish official dictatorship, which is controlled on the private side by Cone elevator media mogul Antti-Paappa Herlin, Finland's blue and white penguin who has lost his way to the wrong pole and who owns the Finnish judiciary more than Anna-Maja Henriksson, the Iron Lady of the Swedish People's Party of Finland, is the reason why he is allowed to direct the fake kidnappings of his own relative Minna Nurminen in the Finnish judiciary in cooperation with the Finnish police. Finland, which in terms of corruption has surpassed even the fictitious Gotham City when it condemns its unprofitable problem citizens to Kari Ohala's medical human rat farms in the name of medically non-existent and imaginary diseases, when Kari Ohala has fed drugs that lower brain functions directly from Chirianio's barrels to family mothers, under the influence of which these family mothers has drowned their own children in bathtubs, in connection with which the coalition and its University of Turku promote human values and rule of law principles, although in reality these actions really beat the Nazi atrocities, not in their massiveness but in their systematicity. The Finnish police, whose role behind the fake hits is clearly something completely different from what is written on its signs, and how you can clearly read the celebratory buzz of success on the faces of the violent crime unit when it has caught its own paid scapegoat, on whose neck the Finnish police's own crimes are rolled with the help of Juha Rautaimo's messed up crime scenes, which has become the Finnish police's main work, namely to ensure that crimes such as murders in Finland are only solved by ending up where the authority is not guilty of any crime. Blue team of stupids that clearly knows how to celebrate its own inexplicable skills in a series where there are no other competitors when it tracked down its own paid scapegoat, who was lost in cold Finland alone and without money. The Finnish police bulldozer of the crime scenes, Juha Rautaimo, who messed up Holsti and Palo's crime scenes with his own vacuum cleaner so well that an innocent person could be convicted of the Finnish police's own crimes, is like a wet nap of the golden Mercedes-Benz of the Finnish police, Jurianio. And why is that? For sure an achievement worth celebrating in the Finnish police headquarters, where has been led and run Europe's biggest drug trade for decades under the approval of the White King of the Coalition and little bit Waco Sauli the Two-Face Niinisto. Finnish blue team of stupids who bought extra time with these executions on Tetan K2 to protect their own crimes, just like with the murder of Jenna Lipomaki in Spain. Finnish blue team of stupids that is up to its throat full of its own crimes as it has moved towards the inevitable, and where all these murdered Finnish citizens have taken the stupid group led by Jurianio, Kari Tolvanen and Juha Rautaimo. Eero Holsti and Torno Palo, who have not been able to get their death sentences except because of the revelation of the illegal actions of the Finnish police, which only proves how Finland is a rule of law only in namely and where death sentences are in use, which are distributed behind the facades with the help of massive cooperation of authorities. It is really sad to see how the Finnish authorities executed Holsti and Palo on Tetan K2 with massive cooperation, like the Jews in Nazi Germany with shots to the neck to protect Jurianio's drug trade and Seppo Selenpa's Honda League. A stupid group whose task seems to be to protect its own crimes and the drug trade led from the headquarters of its own. In order to stay hidden, it is ready to execute even its own law enforcers. One can only imagine who is behind these murders of the Finnish problematic citizens like Petri Salonen, who is just an unrecovered expense item for a Finnish stupid group that worships the National Coalition financial compensations so much that it even accepts the medicinal tortures of Kari Ohala, a churchman and fanatic supporter of national cleansing, National Coalition, medical torture and chemical lobotomies, who is posing as a doctor of the Coalition Human Rat Farms, aka the State Mental Hospital, which is carried out in the name of medically non-existent and imaginary diseases, which is in reality medical abuse. But it is my luck that this area, i.e. the criminal world, does not attract the sharpest edge of our society, and where the professional expertise of the Finnish police is mainly ridiculous, when its legal interpretations as law enforcers have been taken so far from reality that it justifies and sees its own criminal activity mainly as national security, which in the face of revelation, it executes everyone as Jews, traitors, criminals, or just difficult people to deal with, because not everyone accepts this drug trade run from the headquarters of the Finnish police. Holsti and Palo, who are on my criminal investigation list because they are also part of the solution, the purpose of which is to dismantle the dictatorship of the authorities, which is falsely called democracy, a democracy that is like a warm breath from the Nazi bunkers and the madness dug up by the most insane president of the coalition ever lived in Finland. Sauli the Two-Face Niinisto, who accepts the use of people as human rats of medicine and their exterminations in medical care clinics that are managed through systematically organized accidents where there is death as the end result of the operation. Medical care clinics where these disadvantaged citizens are lured by YLE's propaganda machines positive news about a better life, but where there is nothing but death, like in Auschwitz, which has become the main politics of the National Coalition, national cleansing, medical poisoning and chemical lobotomies, which means death to all unprofitable citizens of the Finnish state. The insanity of the White King of the Coalition and Little Bit Waco Sauli the Two-Face Niinisto, who has reawakened the Nazi racial doctrine into a mental health problems, in the name of which it justifies all the same illegalities as the Nazis in their time, which included the mass extermination of people and illegal medical examinations on problem citizens who were unprofitable to the state. Democratic states that have introduced illegal medical research, not in the name of race theory, but in the name of mental health problems, where Finland is a model country for this illegality as well, when it, as a democratic state, enacts forced treatment laws on these 21st century Jews, i.e. problematic citizens who are unprofitable to the state, by which they are subjugated to fuel the academic career of Walter Major Helena, a researcher at the University of Turku. All of this is done against all human rights and in front of which all resistance is executed behind the facades without any contact with the judiciary, and as happened to Eero Holst and Antero Palo on Tetan K2. Eero Holsti and Antero Palo, who are not only heroes like the world's greatest women who ever walked on this planet or any other where Elon Musk sends his rockets, Sophie Scholl and White Rose, but both of these three people have been executed by the Nazi ideology that has been allowed to live all these years in the one-party system of the Turku University and its insane graduate of all time, Sauli the Two-Face Niinisto, and whose handiwork is this one-party system, where all nominal parties, such as the Left Alliance, have been taken over with the help of Lee Anderson, the graduate and the breeder of the human rat farms of the University of Turku. Finnish blue team of stupids whose hero stories are on the wrong side of the law is like the Gestapo of the 40s when it chases problem citizens who are not profitable to the state's closed medical human rat farms for medical use. Blue team of stupids whose activities will surely go down in the history books when they have charged a Danish tourist with its own crimes, just like other crimes they have committed, such as a drug trade run from their own headquarters for decades, which was led by a policeman of the year who kept his own crimes behind the title. The golden Mercedes-Benz of the Finnish police, Chirianio, is preceded by no other than the President of the Republic of Finland, Martti Ahtisaari, with his own Nobel Prize for 30 years of work for peace. Peace, which in Finland is achieved by executing resistance, just like in all dictatorships, and which Eero Holsti and Antero Palo became victims of in Tetan K2 and Tuomas Trisvuori in Uganda.